Welcome, guys, to the second part of my dumbass story. Thank you guys for, you really made me feel good about it. I mean, when you're making the post, like Speed Metal Build out there. And if you haven't checked out their podcast, man, it's pretty fucking good. Him and Cody Childress did a really good job. Very informative. Check those guys out. But anyway, yeah, man, thanks. Appreciate you guys liking the first one. For those of you that did. For those of you who didn't give a shit about it, I don't blame you. It's all good. Yeah, man, this podcast, man, obviously part 2 of number 1. I hope that I did it justice. You know what I mean? A lot of this stuff is a little bit more recent in my life, so, I haven't really been able to put too much thought into some of the things that's taken place, but some of it I have. But, for the most part, I just wanted to let you know what took place from 2014 to now, and I hope I did it justice. And I hope it was interesting to you. But anyway, man, as always, these podcasts, I got to thank my sponsors for keeping us on the air and keeping us rolling. So, as always, Texas Performance MC, man, you're going to hear about me and Mark in this podcast. So, yeah, get ready. But anyway, check him out, Cedar Park, Texas, full service and dyno tuning. He's got all the cool boy shit, right? Check him out, Mark Matthews. My dude, I'm actually going to see him Friday, and we're going to go eat dinner together because we're buddies like that. Can't wait to see you later, buddy. Check him out, Texas Performance MC on Instagram, and put a .com on the end of that, and you're at his website. Check him out in Cedar Park, Texas, like I said originally, and buy some cool shit and let him know you heard about him through the podcast so that he can know this works for him. Also, Paint Huffer Metal Flake. Yeah, man. Gotta love that flake. I'm actually, I got about 6 projects right now completely flaked out in my shop waiting on me to work on them. Yeah, I'm so behind. Jesse's so far ahead of me right now, it's retarded. He's got everything prepped ready for me to do artwork, and I'm just lost. I haven't been able to design shit. I've been in a slump the last couple weeks. But that has nothing to do with Paint Huffer Metal Flake. What does have to do with them is that you can go to their website, painthuffer.com, and get some flake custom paint products like FBS tapes, some of their new Pearl lines, and a lot of other cool shit. And I do know they're in, I think the last podcast I fucked up and said they were in Tempe. Well, I want to say they're in Chandler, Arizona. So if you're out there in Arizona, check him out. I know he's got a new shop where he's selling a lot of products, and you can get all that cool shit there. Go fuck with those dudes. Paint Huffer Metal Flake on IG. If you want to make an order, painthuffer.com. Also, Horsepower Inc. The dudes are still going strong. Getting ready to take that badass fucking Softail up to Milwaukee next month for the 115th. Hope you guys heard the podcast we did with them, and yeah, they're the fucking shit. Horsepowerinc.net. Give them you can get obviously on their website you can get a lot of their cool shit, their air cleaners, and I know they're working on exhaust like I said before, and also the big bore throttle bodies is what they're known for. I'm gonna try to get them to do some carburetors. I think they'd be good at that. Except for that, they got a koozie that says fuck carburetors, and I'm really into carburetors right now, so it's kind of weird. We got to talk about that. Anyway, Horsepower Inc. on Instagram, Horsepower Inc. Indy on Facebook. And also, if you're up in Indianapolis, man, they do dyno tuning and performance out the ass. They're making shit fucking fast as hell. When we were up there, it was nothing but fast-ass dynos in the parking lot. So check these guys out. If you're in the area, let them do some work on your shit. Let them get you dialed in. Also, Hard Drive, American V-Twin products. If you go to Hard Drive or HDTwin.com, you can check out their catalog, I believe. And if you're not a dealer, you can set up to be a dealer, get some of their products in there, and start pushing some cool shit like Sawicki and Jesse Rook and who else? Someone else told me something else cool was in there. I want to say either Forbidden or hard cases in there with the risers. Lindahl wheels, obviously. A lot of good shit in there. Hard Drive Parts on Instagram if you want to check out some of the people, some of the products that they sell. Like I said, hdtwin.com, set up as a dealer. If you're a shop and you want to start pushing or have another variety of products to sell to your customers, this is a good place to go look at stuff. So check them out. They got a lot of good products of their own as well in their catalog, and their shit's growing. So give them a chance, man. hdtwin.com, Hard Drive Parts on IG. Also, I want to thank all you guys for continuing to support this podcast, man. We've been getting a little bit of a spike on our Patreon, which is helpful and very, very needed. Like I said, you're going to hear at the end of this podcast me talking about kind of the direction I want to go with my life. and it has a lot to do with this podcast. So, if you get a chance, or if you care to, just go on that Patreon, which you can get the link to on our fastlifegarage.com website. Right on the front page, there's a link. You become a Patreon subscriber. And once I get through with this rush of work, I swear to God, I will do something for you guys that do Patreon with us. I will do something. It will be big, and it will be worth your while. So please don't sleep on us. Also, if you're on, if you do the YouTube thing, subscribe to us, man. We're going to start pushing towards some stuff soon. Once again, you'll hear it on the end of this podcast. The idea is that, we want to grow our social, or our media aspect of our business, to kind of help supplement some of the income so that we can kind of do more cool shit, right? That's obviously what business is made for, right? Anyway, yeah, man, this podcast, man, is me again talking about my dumbass life. So I appreciate you guys that's taking the time out of your day to hear it and listen to it. And, if you ever have any questions or whatever, man, I don't know why you'd have questions about my life. That's weird. But just anyway, man, just thank you guys for checking it out. Thank you for continuing to support this, and thank you for continuing to share it on your Instagram page, to put it on your stories, and just please do that as much as you can. If you dig any of it, share it. Maybe somebody else, like I said before, will check it out and find some real value in our podcast and decide that they want to help support us through Patreon, and then it's going to help us grow and, keep doing what we're doing. So, I want to thank you guys 10,000%. This is me again talking about me.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
Fast Life Podcast.
What is up? Welcome back, everybody. Yeah, so, just like how I left you on a cliffhanger on that one, I guess it's, I've had time to think about how I wanted to approach this next, 2014 up until now. And, I kind of recorded something, but, like I said, I was kind of rambling all over the place, back and forth. So I found it to be easier if I do it once and listen to it, and then I can kind of go back and just fine tune it and cut out the shit that wasn't important or really didn't lead to anything. So at any rate, I left off with you guys at the end of 2013. I was, kind of at a low point per se, because of, the loss of the business and the just financially just really struggling, trying to figure out what the next step was going to be, and trying to, keep an open mind of opportunities and things like that. And, this is where Instagram, in my opinion, really started to play a major role of everything in my life. And so I think maybe the key things of this podcast is Instagram and more growth and more figuring out where I fucked up and fixing it. You know what I mean? So anyway, like I said in the last podcast, man, Instagram started doing these, gave us the ability to send direct messages. And, Britta, who is my wife, I don't know if I said that already, but she is the one that I'm speaking of here. She was living in Florida. I was in Texas. She had commented on something on some page. It was a motorcycle page, or a car, something that I followed back then, right? And her comment was that she thought painters were sexy. So, of course, I had to, say what's up, say hi, blah, blah, blah. And or I just followed her, basically. I didn't even say anything to her. So it was a couple months of me stalking her, basically. And, I just went, I kind of got to a point, man. I was kind of dating around a lot, going on dates and, trying to make things work with, an old ex that just fizzled out, and it kind of had me bummed out. And, I don't know. I guess I was a little desperate at this point in time, because it was right around Christmas. There wasn't a lot of people going out and partying. So that kind of was done. It was cold. It was just like, it just sucked, man, really. But, I found comfort in talking to her, like just being able to shoot the shit with somebody. I mean, like if she was living in Dallas, then of course, fuck all the small talk. Let's just go hang out. Right. But because I didn't have that luxury of being able to go see her and hang out with her, it ended up becoming where we just spent a lot of time talking on the phone, text messaging, all that stuff, which kind of led up to where we, what happened. But so the beginning of 2014, like I mentioned in the last podcast, Andrew from Andrew's Custom Cycles reached out to me about doing some sketches. I knocked those sketches out, and then he proceeded to ask me if I would be willing to come out and do the artwork. And I was like, fuck yeah, that's dope. I mean, I wasn't like married to any kind of like work at the time in Dallas. So the opportunity was just like perfect, And the good thing about this was it gave me the ability to kind of like the travel aspect, you know what I mean? Not like the way I travel now, but like this is the first time that I've ever gone anywhere and I stayed for an extended amount of time. We went to North Carolina, to do these jobs for Andrew. I flew out there, I didn't know anybody other than through social media. It was just kind of like, I was planning on being there for 3 weeks to do these 2 bikes, which, like I said, it was cool, It was an experience nonetheless. I got to see what it was like to live somewhat in, Greensboro, North Carolina. I got to see the ins and outs and this and that. And I mean, it was good. Like that kind of stuff made me fall in love with like traveling and getting to see what it's like in different cities and stuff. You know what I mean? Like different parts of the country. It's like, it's so crazy how different everything is. But that was the introduction to me being in love with traveling. I didn't realize it at the time. To me at the time, it was like, it was just another job, and it was like kind of cool to say that I got flown out to do a bike somewhere. It was kind of like more of a, like the icing on the ego cake, I guess you'd say. But yeah, while I was out there, man, it was cool because Andrew was a good dude, but obviously, there's only so much we had to talk about. So, I was staying at his house, and he had let me borrow his truck every night. He had like a little Toyota or whatever that was kind of like a, he's really big into mini trucks, but this Toyota was just like a beater that he rode around in every day. Dude had a Lamborghini too, but he rode this Toyota everywhere, like a 96 or some shit. But he used to let me drive that, and I found a little gym not too far from there. And at this point in my life, I was a little bit more into working out. I had a lot more time on my hands. It was easier to kind of keep, and this is all excuses, by the way. It was easier for me to kind of keep a track of, eating and spending and shit like that. I was just, you know what I mean? I wasn't just easier, right? So I used to work out a lot. I had a badass gym in my apartment or my loft that I was living in. So working out was life, bruh. You know what I mean? So anyway, I ended up getting like a little 3-week membership to this place. And so every day after we got done doing work or, anything, I went to that gym and I played basketball, lifted weights, worked out every fucking day. You know what I mean? And I loved it because there was nothing else I could do. It was no like, hey man, we're all riding bikes down the street. No, it was none of that. It was just go in there, work out, come home, watch some Netflix. But at the same time, these 3 weeks while I was gone, I didn't really have anybody other than Andrew and the people that worked in the shop to kind of talk to a lot. So this is where me and Britta really kind of built the foundation of our relationship through lots and lots of conversation. You know what I mean? And even to this day, like, I don't know how the fuck we had so much to talk about, but we did. And that's kind of what created the buzz. So every day spending, every day in North Carolina, just working and then texting and then coming back and talking on the phone and FaceTime and all that shit kind of created a friend, you know what I mean? Someone that, was invested in my life at the moment. And, I was kind of talking to another girl at home, but not like dating, but, we've been messing around, blah, blah, blah. And it was just kind of like, the whole time I was gone, I think we texted twice, and it was like, hey, how you doing? Good. How you doing? Good. That was in the discussion, man. So there was really nothing going on there. There was nothing captivating my attention, you know what I mean? And this conversation and this, what was going on with Britta was just kind of like overwhelming my senses, I guess you'd say. Anyway, we got these bikes done. These are the 232s, 2 different bikes, and they both had 32-inch wheels, which we were doing for, the V-Twin Expo thing that was, they were going to be putting together. So I got these bikes done, flew back home. The day I flew home was the Super Bowl. So I was kind of thinking of like, the chick that I just mentioned I was kind of talking to. Me and Britta were talking a lot, but in my head it was still like, she's in Florida, I'm in Texas, no big deal. So I went back to the place and, to my house in Dallas. And one of the dudes in my bike club was throwing a Super Bowl party, and then that chick that I was kind of talking to kind of was like gonna go, and so we went, and like she started acting all bougie and shit, and I was like, man, fuck this, you know what I mean? So I just kind of like told her I wasn't interested anymore, and then I reached out to Britta and kind of more or less said, hey, you know, I want to meet you, which, you know, I was like, can I fly out? Can we hang out for a weekend or something? So I flew out there, got a rental car, got a hotel. We spent the weekend together. You know, we didn't go all the way or nothing like that. It was just, we really just spent the weekend together, got to know each other even more. I don't even know what else we had to get to know each other about. But we spent, you know, a lot of time, had fun. I had a blast in fucking Fort Lauderdale. If you live out there, guys, y'all are lucky. That's a cool ass place. So, you know, all of a sudden, you know, January 2014, you know, I go from like from the moment I was born till then, I'd only been to California twice, you know, once from back in my import tuner days and once for the Torres Empire thing. And that was really the only travel I ever went to. I flew to, SEMA once, and then I flew to, Myrtle Beach Black Bike Week. That was a crazy fucking place. But, you know, other than that, I never really traveled anywhere, you know. So right off the rip, you know, in 2014, I'm in North Carolina. You know, the next month I'm in fucking Fort Lauderdale, Florida, you know, and it was just kind of like slowly eating at me like, hey, man, you should do this more often, you know. But anyway, I went out there and met her. You know, we had a good time, man. It was just fun. And I think I had every intentions of smashing, but, you know, got too drunk the first night. And the second night put too much emphasis on getting the ass. So it just didn't happen. And then when it didn't happen, I was like, I'm kind of glad it didn't. You know what I mean? And so basically I got home, and then 2 weeks later, you know, she flew out to Dallas, and then she spent like almost a week out here. And, you know, I just showed her Dallas, man. She had a good time. She got to see the apartment, got to meet my kids, got to meet my family, all my friends, and she dug it. So, you know, 2 weeks after she got home, she moved to Dallas. You know what I mean? And we've been together ever since. So that, to me, that was a good thing. But realistically, you know, you heard the first part of this podcast and how I said, you know, the last relationships that I had, they had all these ups and downs and this, that, and the other. And I was an insecure guy and this kind of, you know what I mean? And not that I figured this out, and not that I'm the best guy to give anybody advice on relationships, but, you know, once you think you found somebody that's good, that's the kind of person you want to be with, you know, I found that what I did when I decided, like when we decided to be together, I got rid of every chick's phone number. Like, I wouldn't say got rid of them. I cut everybody off. Like, I wasn't answering text. You know, I delete certain numbers. I didn't portray myself anymore like I'm looking for pussy and shit like that. So, you know, I kind of like eliminated the threats or the temptations or all that type of shit out of this, because going into this relationship, you know, I really wanted to go into it with a clear conscience and no secrets. You know what I mean? I didn't want to go into it like where I have to keep my phone with me all the time, or, you know, she can't have I just wanted a relationship that way because I'd never had one. I'd always been hiding something, or they'd been hiding something. It was foul. You know what I mean? So this was a chance to, you know, I found somebody I really dig, you know, that I do want to spend, you know, I mean, it's still young, but I still, you know, I could see myself spending the rest of my life with this chick. So I wanted to invest in her just like I would invest in anything else in my life that I liked. You know, I didn't want to just half-ass do it. You know what I mean? So I cut everything out. You know what I mean? And it made it, you know, a lot easier to just be open and truthful and not have to worry about things, you know, ruining our relationship, you know, because it's like I said, I'm not trying to make this relationship podcast. So anyway, I didn't do anything. I cut out all the problems. You know, and to this day, I've, you know, 100% faithful, never cheated, nothing like that. Don't even talk to girls in anything else than business. You know what I mean? So to me, that's the only way to have a successful relationship. And it eliminates insecurities, man. Like it gets rid of that shit to where it's like, you know, you're not worried, you know, you're not thinking about what you've done. So you're not like thinking that she's doing it. It's weird how it works, but it works. Trust me. I think. Anyway, so she moves in, you know what I mean? And everything's going good, man. I'm kind of like still working out of a shop in Plano, and, you know, it's a little bit different crowd that I'm used to, but, you know, I'm getting jobs. I'm kind of still making it. I still have a name in Dallas Fort Worth, so I'm still getting work. And like I said, man, this is the Instagram thing, man. It took me to North Carolina. It just found my girlfriend for me. The next thing you know, I remember the day it was, man. I posted a picture of a logo I did for this shop that I was working out of in Plano. I posted a picture of the logo, and it was super clean, but it was all paint, but it looked really nice. And a dude out in fucking North California, up in like the Bay Area, ended up reaching out to me and saying that he was building a bike, and actually was his customer, and they were going back and forth whether or not using me. And I don't know if they said this to blow my head up, but they told me it was between me and Corey St. Clair, which I've never even been close to that dude's level of artistic ability. You know what I'm saying? So I think they were just gassing me up just to get me to I'm easy to get gassed up and easy to get riled up. So I think they were doing that to me. But anyway, they reached out to me, and they had, this dude, Steve, that had the shop. The shop was called Trendsetters. And the dude, Jesse, was having Steve build a bike, and they wanted me to paint it or do the artwork, because Steve also does paint on top of the other shit he did at his shop. So they hit me up and asked me how much. I gave them ballpark price, and then, I went out there, and actually they were going to fly me out, and that was the plan. But the longer and longer we talked, and then Steve started hitting me up saying, man, I got a lot of work up here. I got another bike you can do. I got a dyno you can do. I got all this. So I was like, man, I'm going to need a vinyl cutter. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need that. So I was like, man, what if I just drive up there and y'all just cut me the gas, right? So that's what we ended up doing. And that way, Britta had just moved there. She'd only been in Texas for a month. And I was like, man, I don't want to fucking leave her for 3 weeks alone in a city that she doesn't have anybody. So needless to say, she's from California originally, SoCal area. So we made it all worked out real well. So basically, we jumped in the car, threw all our shit in it, I threw all my art stuff in there. Drove to fucking, SoCal, got to see her aunt, got to meet her dad, got to, spend time with her family that she hadn't seen in a long time. And it was just good. It was good to meet them all and stuff like that. And then we, from there, we drove up to the Bay Area. His shop was in Byron, you know what I mean? So it was kind of a crazy deal. Another kind of stepping back a little bit, man, like there was a guy in my bike club. His name was Chris, man. He lived in downtown Dallas, and I actually met him at a bar, hanging out. I was on a road glide, or my road glide, and he had a road glide. So that's how the conversation kind of got started. And so we ended up being real close friends. And through that winter time before I met Britta and stuff, like we were just kind of like bar hopping all the time. And he had this app that showed everybody or showed us where the drink specials were at. So we just had a good time. And I think that friendship with him kind of really helped me cope with, not having any chicks or whatever to kind of whatever. It was just cool having a guy like that just to hang out that was like-minded, that wasn't necessarily a shop guy. He was successful in his industry, that he did his thing. And it was just, we were the same age. So it was just a good fucking combination of, two different spectrums of people that have a common interest and came together and found a good friendship with it. So, but he was originally from the Bay Area. So, right at the, we became friends in September, and we were inseparable, basically hanging out all the time. The dude ended up joining my bike club. And then, he prospected, he didn't quite do a full prospect period, but, he ended up getting to a point where he was gonna move out of Dallas and go back home for a job opportunity. So he ended up moving back to the Bay Area. And, literally the day after I went to North Carolina, he ended up moving back. So it sucked because I didn't really get to see him, but we had a blast before he left and before I left out of town. But man, I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic. I was trying not to do this, but, it was just good, man. It was even to this day is one of the, I love that dude to death. I have a lot of Chris's in my life, and this is one of them. So crazy thing is where he moved back to in the Bay Area, which is more inland, it was literally 1 mile away from the shop that I went to go work at up in the Bay Area. So he moved back to a town called Discovery Bay, and the shop where Trendsetters was located was in Byron, which is literally the next town, a little small ass town over. So it was a super trippy thing, in such a big area of California or even NorCal, that my friend would be located right there. So I used to say that we went up there for 2 weeks, man. We went up there to knock out that bike, the one I mentioned, and then we ended up painting another Road Glide. And then I ended up doing my first Dyna too while I was up there, which was pretty dope. And then Steve had just bought he's the owner of Trendsetters. He had just bought a new 14 Street Glide, and this is right when they came out, or 13 Street Glide. Whatever year the first Rushmore was. Yeah, it was 14 Street Glide. Yeah, that's right. Getting it right. Anyway, so we ended up buying the first one, or like right when it came out, and he was going to do a big wheel on it, but at the time he was just kind of sitting at the shop. So he's like, man, if you want to ride it, you can. So me and, I rode around with him, with my buddy Chris, and, and then one day he got some tickets and took us down to San Francisco, and, he got us tickets to go see the fucking Alcatraz, and we rode the BART, which is their rapid area transit system there. So it was kind of like subway-ish once you get into San Francisco, which was all a pretty cool experience. For me, some broke-ass kid from, South Dallas that was, I never thought I was going to do anything in life, and here I am, getting to see things that, I didn't really expect or even plan or even thought I would ever care to do, you know what I mean? So it was just cool, man. It was just cool to be out there, and it was a rad thing to be out there with somebody that I had already became a good friend with, And then, me and Steve, man, we ended up becoming, over the time that we spent, from this moment even up to this day, we created a tight bond and respect for each other and what we do with, each one of us do for our work or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's cool, man. I know I say it's cool a lot, but I think it's my new comfort word. Yeah, it's cool because of this, and it's cool because of that. You just trade one comfort word for another when you do these podcasts. You start doing all this type of shit. It's a weird, and that's another one. It's a weird thing, right? Anyway. But yeah, so, we spent 2 weeks up in the Bay Area, did that, and ended up driving back down towards, SoCal again to see our family again before we drove home. And then we make it back home, and basically it's the end of May, and we're getting ready to go to Rot Rally, you know what I mean? So our whole club is going to be headed down to Rot Rally which is down in Austin, if you don't know anything about that. And so we were heading down there, and we got us our whole club bought a house, or rented a house down there for us all to go do, have somewhere to stay and chill and party and stuff. And while we were down there, Nick from Live Fast, my old company, he had reached out to me and said something about, wanting to, basically wanting to see if, he just asked me if I wanted to go have a beer, you know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, I'm down here, so fuck it. I didn't really have any bad blood to him. I was disappointed that he didn't kind of back me up, or he didn't stand behind me, or that it got to a point where we weren't close friends anymore. I was more disappointed in our friendship than our failed business partnership. You know what I mean? And, but anyway, like I said, I'm not one to hold grudges. I'm not one to get all butthurt. I'm a businessman, you know what I mean? So it's we don't have to be fucking best friends, and we don't have to, text all day hey buddy, what's going on, and send shit pics to each other like some weird people do. But I have friends like that. Yeah, it's weird. But anyway, my thought was, hey, if this dude might be reaching out because they want to do some work, and I'm like, I'm a fucking paint hustler, man. That's what I do. So if they need some shit painted, I'll put the difference aside and go do it. I don't know. I mean, I think I would have. I don't know if I could have, though. That's kind of one thing that, you just got to kind of cross that bridge when you get there. But at any rate, he reached out to me. We sat down. We were at some bar, and he was telling me hey, see, you've been doing a lot of cool shit, blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, thanks. I've been traveling a lot, and then he kind of proceeds to tell me all the drama that's going on with the shop, and I'm a sucker for some some drama, I guess. So he started telling me what's going on and telling me that they've had some they've been doing some investigating and whatnot, and they had found out that DeMarcus, they found for a fact that there's over $700,000 missing from all the accounts. They got a hold of all the records. They had someone else go through it, and basically they just had a missing $700,000. So they were preparing to kind of confront DeMarcus, and they hadn't done it yet. So they were just kind of reaching out to me for I don't know why the fuck he's reaching out to me. He just did, but at the time they were also moving from the shop that we originally had in Cedar Hill, Texas, to Deep Ellum, Texas, which Deep Ellum's kind of one of our more trendier areas in Dallas-Fort Worth. It's kind of like the happening place. It's where we host the bike nights that we do every week. But and it also sucked because I lived in downtown Dallas, which was only a block or two, probably like a mile away from this new shop they were building. So they had this my logo that I fucking remember, the place, the house I lived in, and the desk that I drew it on, the logo for my business, or the Live Fast Customs. I remember it all, and I'm driving by and I'm seeing this thing on this badass fucking building, a building of my dreams, and I'm just like, fuck, man, like, was it a good idea to, try to confront him and try and sell my shares? Was it worth it? And, realistically at the time, it was going down. Like, I wasn't really aware of all the great things that were happening to me at the moment. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, oh, fuck, I left my business and, oh shit, look at this great opportunity hitting me in the face. Like, you kind of are unaware, or I was unaware of like the real positive things that were really changing, that was helping reshape my life, that only happened because of this downfall, and, so I was still kind of in a more up and down emotional swing kind of thought process when it came to that business and that whole, like, the way it all transpired, you know what I mean? So I was kind of like butthurt about it still. But, when Nick told me that they found out he was stealing money and this, that, and the other, and it kind of like made me feel good because for once I wasn't like I didn't walk away from something feeling like, man, was it me? Was it me that was really the asshole? Was it me that was really the bad guy, or was it them? You know what I mean? So that was a good reinforcement, and like I said, they were rebranded. The way they ended up dealing with the whole deal was like they couldn't quite pinpoint it all on him, but they knew he stole all the money. And obviously, if you heard some of the last podcast, you heard me talking about the kind of shit he was how he was carrying himself and buying all the shit and just doing stuff that he couldn't afford until he came into the business with us. And so their solution was to just give him Live Fast Customs 100%, the name, the ownership, all the accounts, everything like that. They kept everything that was tangible that you can hold, all the motorcycles and the shop vehicles and the trailers and all this shit. They just kept it, rebranded the shop. They ended up calling it All Star Baggers is what they ended up calling it. And they ended up putting somebody else kind of heading it up, and he's kind of still there today. And like I said, I'm not really there. It's a weird vibe, still doing business, because we've painted a lot of bikes for them since this took place. You know what I mean? And it's a weird thing, but like I said, man, it's like going forward, skipping a little bit ahead of time now. It's like they paved, swallowing my pride and starting to do work for these guys again after they kind of put me on my ass. There was years and months and times where the work they sent me kept my business going. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know, man. It's just weird. You know what I mean? It's a strange thing. But anyway, so right after, Rot Rally, it was a positive reinforcement of knowing that I wasn't, 100% at fault in the failure of my part of that business. You know what I mean? I could have been, the reason for some things to take place. I am somewhat of an artist, and I am, I can be complicated to deal with. I have a very like leader kind of personality in a sense. So sometimes I have a hard time taking a back seat in things, and I'm aware of it, but it doesn't mean that I can't keep my mouth shut all the time. You know what I mean? So at any rate, we get back from a Rot Rally. It was cool to hang out. It was good to know what was going on. We get back from Rot Rally beginning of June, and then, Andrew from Custom Cycles reaches out again, and I fly out to fucking North Carolina for 2 more weeks to knock out some more bikes. And, like I said, at this point in time, it's July. It's at the end of June, and I've literally only been present for maybe 2 months out of the year in Dallas. Like, I've been on the road doing something for the other fucking 6 months, or the other 4 months of that 6-month period. So I go out there to, Andrews again. We knock out some more bikes. We have a good time. Got to ride one of those 32s that I helped, paint earlier that year. It was just cool, man. It was good to, Andrew's a good dude. It was just nice to see him and talk to him again. And Did the same thing. I went to the gym and worked out a lot while I was there. It was kind of a reminiscent time of thinking a couple months back. But, you know, Britta was home. She stayed here. She has family in Austin, so she was just kind of hanging out, spent some time with my kids, all that type of stuff. This whole year of 2014 when she moved here, you know, because we traveled so much and we were making money off doing the motorcycle stuff, she didn't really have to work, which was kind of cool because it kind of gave her a chance to kind of just settle in and get used to, you know, all the shit. And she was, you know, she is my best friend. So it was just cool to be able to hang out with her all the time and shit like that. So especially at the beginning of our relationship where everything is new and exciting and fun and stuff. So, and anyway, we, you know, I go down there, do a couple more bikes for Andrew and some other guys out there in North Carolina, fly back to Texas. It's the beginning of July. I have like 2 baggers lined up. And then a good friend of mine reached out and said, hey, you know, I'm going to Sturgis this year if you want to go. And I'm like, man, I can't really swing that. You know, in my head, I always looked at Sturgis as kind of like a very, you got to have money to go to Sturgis. And in some senses, you do kind of need to have money to go to Sturgis. But I've learned now that there's ways around it. But at that time, I was just like, man, I can't afford to go up there and blah, blah, blah. He was like, man, no, I got my company's paying for a place for us to stay. You know, if you want to come, it's all good. I'm trailering our bikes up there. There's room on the trailer if you want to throw your bike on it and blah, blah, blah. And I was just kind of thinking. I was like, fuck, you know, because also at this time, you know, we were planning on going back to California to knock out a whole bunch of bikes. Like me and Steve had kind of gotten close at that last business thing we did together. And he was moving to a bigger shop and he had lined up all this. There's so much fucking work in NorCal. It's crazy. But he had lined up a lot of work. And I looked at it like, fuck, man, I'll just come up there for a couple of months and we'll just stay out there and knock out all these jobs, you know what I mean? And make it happen. So, but anyway, you know, my buddy reached out and we ended up going to Sturgis with him. I ended up meeting Brad, which is, you know, you heard him a couple months back on our podcast and he's been a close friend of mine ever since. But the whole time we were driving up there in the truck, me and Brad were just sitting there talking to each other. You know, we were getting to know each other and we were like, fuck, man, like, dude, we should be riding these bikes right now. Let's ride. You know, we just was talking about riding the bikes, you know what I mean? And at this point in my life, like I had ridden to, you know, Phoenix, ridden to Panama Beach. I've done a lot of local rides in Texas and stuff like that, but I wasn't really like there was a guy online that I used to follow, or I still follow, and I want to get him on the podcast, but he lives up north. He was doing like trips across the country on his big wheel bagger. You know, this green bike had like a Kawasaki front end on it, but it was a green bagger. And this dude fucking put miles on that bike. It was like, damn, I wish I'll try to look him up real quick. But dude, the dude did so much stuff on his bike and he documented it really well on his Instagram. And it was just like seeing him do it made me want to, you know, just do it. You know what I mean? Get out and see that type of shit and do it on a bike. And you know, like I said, I was influenced by him basically. This dude was the main influence. And fuck, I'm trying to find him on my phone real quick because I really want to give him credit. Fuck, hold on, let me pause it and let me find it. Okay, I fucked up. I could not find it at all. Anyway, like I said, this dude was kind of like doing a lot of stuff on his bagger, and it kind of really influenced me to want to start traveling. And then while we're sitting here, you know, this year we've done a road trip to Cali. But prior to this, and now we're in a truck again going to Sturgis, and you know, it just started kind of planting that seed of wanting to ride bikes and go far. You know what I mean? So, you know, I was just kind of, you know, it was just the beginning. Like we were just planting that seed, you know. So we get to Sturgis, we have a good time. You know, like I said, I don't really want to get too deep into the Sturgis trips and stuff, but it was a great first experience, and you know, it was good, like becoming friends with Brad on that deal. It was just awesome. So we got back from Sturgis, and our lease was up in the loft. So the idea was we're going to move everything out. I'm going to store everything at my grandparents' house, and then we're going to jump in the car and go back to NorCal and work for a couple of months. And that's what we fucking did. So we got home. Actually, we moved out before Sturgis. So it was the 1st of July. I paid the rent up all the way through August, but just because of the time thing, you know, the rent was, I mean, the lease was over at the end of August, but so we paid the month, and then we moved out, and then, you know, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so we jumped back in the car, man. We drive back to NorCal, you know, and at this point in time, my buddy Chris, I mentioned earlier, he had bought a house in a town called Mountain House, and Steve moved his shop to Stockton. So My buddy had he had a roommate, and then, he had a 3-bedroom house. So he ended up letting me and my wife, Britta, we just ended up staying there in his spare bedroom. And, man, like, I mean, total, we stayed up there for 2 months, but it was awesome being up there, being with my friend Chris, and just, getting to hang out with him and all this type of stuff. And I remember this really cool thing about being up there at this moment in time was, that Street Glide I mentioned earlier that Steve had, he was still just kind of hanging out, you know what I mean? So I ended up just pretty much confiscating that and riding it back and forth to work every day. And one weekend or something, me and Chris, he's like, man, I want to take you on this ride. So we rode from like Mountain House all the way up through Napa Valley, over through Petaluma, all the way up into Bodega Bay. Just kind of showed me the Bay Area, or that part of the Bay up there. And then we rode the coast all the way down back into San Francisco. And man, that little stretch of riding was fucking amazing. At this point in time, I hadn't ridden PCH yet. I hadn't even ridden in California yet. So this was like another part of that, planting the seed of the riding part of it. You know what I mean? So he showed me this part of it. And, of course, there's a part that I always go to by the Golden Gate Bridge that I always take pictures at. It's called Battery Spencer. It's like up on a hill. It's got a fucking amazing view of San Francisco and the bridge and the Bay Area. It's just a badass spot. So we rode the bikes, rode up to that spot. His brother actually lived in downtown, or in San Francisco, like right on the top of one of the streets where where the Lombardi Street is, I guess, is the one that's like zigzag all the way down. He lived right on the top. So we went going down there and hanging out with his brother, going to some of the local bar, pub, and it was awesome. Like, I tell people all the time, like, the Bay Area is my second home 100%. Having so many friends up there and people that I've become so close with since this part of my life that I'm talking about right now, But, yeah, we ended up staying up in the Bay from the middle of August up until the middle of October. We did a lot of jobs. I started to get homesick, and, I hadn't really been away from home that long. And, like I said, even that 3-week period at the beginning of this year, whenever I went to North Carolina, like, I had never been away from home that long. It was, I've never done that. Like, I think the longest I ever been away was when I went to SEMA the first time. We were there the whole week. So that's I've never been gone 3 weeks. I've never been gone 2 months. So needless to say, I was missing my friends. I was missing my kids big time, and it was kind of, it just sucked, man. It was just hard, not being there. Like my son, I probably haven't really talked much about him, but, there's a weird thing about, like, for me at least, it's like I have an amazing bond with my daughter just because of growing up with her, basically. But my son, man, it's a weird deal. Like, now, when I had him, I was more grown, a little bit more responsible, had more shit together. And I just really wanted to be like a great dad to him, as far as like a great male role model for him or whatever. And then, of course, me and his mom doesn't work out. So it becomes real hard to parent the way that I always wanted to parent a son, from a distance. So it's like I missed a lot of things that I wish that we could have, me and his mom could have had, maybe worked out our shit or whatever. But so I missed him, you know what I mean? Not getting too deep into that either, but, I missed him. I wanted to see, and I enjoy spending time with him. So it's like I really want to be there as much as possible for him. And honestly, between him and my daughter, that's really the biggest reason why I haven't moved to California. Like we've been talking about it for years, but, I love being able to spend time with my son every other weekend or whenever I get a chance to, you know what I mean? It's awesome. It's awesome that he, I love the fact whenever I go pick him up or whatever, like he lights up, like I try to have fun with him, but not like spoil him. You know what I mean? I want him to have a good time when he's here with me. So anyway, I wanted to get home for that. So we got back to Dallas in like the middle of October. And, at this point in time, we were just thinking of like, just staying the rest of the year at my grandparents' house until the beginning of the year. We started talking to a shop out here in Red Oak where I, kind of was living for the last couple of years. And it was a badass shop. It was right on the main road. It had a paint booth in it. It had it was separated from a back half and a front half. So the front half could have been like retail and service and all the shit you do on bikes. And the back half could be like custom paint and repair and things like that. So it was a perfect shop. And they only wanted like $1,600 a month. So I was like totally in on this idea, right? And so we ended up finding a house, come January. We found a house like a mile away from this shop. because we were supposed to be moving the shop February 1st. So yeah, I was like, fuck it, man. Like, let's do it. Right. So we ended up renting the house, getting it. And, then literally 2 days later, which we moved into the house, the 30th or the 29th of January. And then on the 1st, when I go to sign the lease, the fucking place for the shop decides that they don't want to lease it out. So now I'm in a house. I'm stuck. I just signed a 2-year lease at this house, and I'm stuck in it now. You know what I mean? And I can't, now I'm stuck to one side of town. Like, before I lived in downtown, I could have my shop anywhere in Dallas-Fort Worth, and it was relatively easy to get to it. Now I'm in Red Oak, so it's like, it's 20 miles south of Dallas, so it's like it limits where I can go and move and operate and do work at. So it was a bitch, man. It was kind of sucks, but I got a little bit ahead there. But at the end of November of 2014, my dude Chris that I was talking about, we stayed at his house, blah blah blah, in NorCal. He ended up having a really bad wreck, and it kind of put him. I didn't find out about the wreck until a month afterwards. You know what I mean? Because he used to travel all over the world doing like airplane part sales or some shit. So when he had the wreck, I just assumed that he was out of town. You know what I mean? Like, he was just out on the road. And then his girlfriend, who didn't live out there, it's probably confusing. I'm sorry. Somebody from his side of the world reached out to me, right? And let me know what was going on. And man, that shit hurt me, man, because I was scared of losing somebody close. I immediately wanted to come out there, and they were like, no, there's no point. He's in a coma. He's not going to know anything. You're just going to waste your time. But it's like, it's a helpless feeling knowing that somebody that you love to death as a friend is just, in a coma because of a motorcycle accident. You know what I mean? And I mean, I think it probably wasn't, but, obviously in California, they have a helmet law. And a lot of people, especially at this era of our motorcycling, we were doing the bagger thing, and so we would always just have some half shell or some little German style helmet, which doesn't do shit if you wreck. And that's what he was wearing. And he had a 2013 Road Glide, and the front brakes kind of locked up on it, which had been a issue on that bike. I guess from the factory, they've been having recalls on that shit. And it happened to us before. We've been riding in it, but we were going slow enough to where it would just slow him down. Well, this time he was going between Livermore and Mountain House on one of the passes, like the little mountain passes, and it just locked him up, threw him off the bike. He went down the side of a hill and hit his head pretty hard, and he had to relearn to walk and talk and do functioning things. I mean, it was a crazy thing. But anyway, like, what happened with this deal was, when he finally came to and he started kind of getting back together, me and my bike club, since he was in it, decided to do a ride to California to see him, right? And so we planned this ride for March, and the idea was to do this ride and just go see him, and then also the selfish part of it was you're getting to ride to California and do a lot of cool shit. So it was like, it was kind of defeating it was doing a lot for us, and we were getting to see our brother that was fucked up, right? So, and I'll get to that part, but basically, back to like moving into the house, we got the house. Also, my daughter had came back to live with me. She wanted to kind of live with me. I don't know what the reason was, or I think her mom was moving to Oklahoma and she didn't want to move. So we rented that house, signed a 2-year lease so that she could, kind of establish herself at a school and not be moving a lot, And then, she only lived with us for about 4 or 5 months, we had so much going on between me and Britta. Britta started working, and then this is kind of when I started the Fast Life Garage. So it was just kind of like us. We weren't home a lot, you know what I mean? Or we wouldn't get home till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So she was alone a lot, and I don't blame her for wanting to go back with her mom's. I think it was the best thing for her, you know what I mean? So yeah, she came to live with us for about 4 or 5 months. We rented this house. We were supposed to get this shop. That shop fell through. So I was just kind of working out of the garage at this house. I ended up, my orange bike that I built that was on the magazine cover, we ended up stripping it all the way down to the frame. And while I was in California, I was buying parts for it, modifying things, making a lot of shit happen. I also designed a wheel for Sinister Wheels, and that wheel, they ended up giving me one of the wheels that I designed to put on my bike. It ended up being a super popular wheel, so I was kind of a dumbass for just doing the design for a wheel. You know what I mean? So that, like I said, it's not Sinister's fault. Those are my dudes. I made the arrangements, so it's my fault for giving something that I do away for nothing. You know what I mean? For such a cheap price, and they've profited so much off of it. You know what I mean? Note to self. But anyway, so I designed a wheel. I had designed a back end kit too, like an ass end, like bags, fender, and everything. And it was I fucking hand foamed all this shit and was body working it and fiberglass in it. Needless to say, it was super heavy, and I didn't want to run that. So I ended up reaching up to that All Star Baggers place and asking them if they wanted to buy this design, this ass end that I designed. And they were interested, so I ended up selling them the design, the bags, everything I'd created for about $2,500. And I didn't want any kind of, like I said, I didn't want any like royalties or anything from what they were selling. I just wanted to sell the design and be done with it. And so I ended up selling it to them, got the money, put the down payment for the house, and I had the other half of that money that was going to be the down payment for the rent house, by the way. And the other was going to be the down payment for the rent for the shop. So when the shop fell through, I had the extra cash. And I reached out to my buddy Brandon. You heard me talking about him on the last podcast. We're still good friends to this day. And I was reaching out to him. I was showing him this ring that I had found that I wanted to buy Brita. And it's a nice ring. I like it, but it wasn't like, I've known some people that have done some crazy lengths of designing things and having rings designed for, marriages or proposals or whatever. And I just wasn't on that wavelength, or that wasn't in tune with that shit. And me, I'm not a jewelry person at all. So I don't hold a lot of value towards jewelry, so I don't look at it like in that light. Like, I don't know, it's weird. But anyway, I found a ring, and I had showed it to Brita a year before, and I reached out to Brandon. I was like gonna buy this ring or whatever, and then he ended up finding that exact ring on eBay. You know what I mean? So he's an eBay dude. He's cheap as fuck. You know what I mean? He's always looking for a deal. So he found the ring on eBay. He reached out to me. He goes, "Dude, it's $2,800 in the store. I found it for $1,100 on eBay." And I was like, "That's kind of weird though, right?" And he's like, "Nah, man. The dude just asked, if the chick would marry him, and she said no. So he's selling the ring. He couldn't return it and get his money back or something like that." And so I was like, "Fuck it, all right." So I used the other half of that money from selling those bags to buy that ring. And then we got the ring in and all that shit. And then I was trying to do this like elaborate proposal, and Brita, being the nosy motherfucker she is sometimes, kept trying to, she was getting mad at me because she didn't know what was going on. So we were having arguments about me trying to hide the fact that I was about to propose to her. It was a crazy fucking thing. It was weird. But anyway, ended up proposing to her on February 14th. I know I'm real fucking creative, right? It was pretty cool. It was a nice little spot. Actually, it's right across the street from where I'm living now in downtown Dallas. So it was pretty cool, man. She said yes, obviously. So that's always good. But right after, right around March, you know what I mean? So I was building my bike. I was rebuilding my bagger. It was in the garage. I put a lift in there. We did a frame off build, and this is when it was white. It was white with all this airbrush work on top of it, and it had I just started getting okay at silver leafing. I really wasn't that good at it yet, but it was just, I was able to get by with it. So I did this whole bike, had some motor work done to it. I put this new wheel I designed on it. Put a new air ride kit. I just went all out on this bike. I took the orange bike, which was custom 26, all this shit that everybody liked, and I just put the new, when I built the orange one, it was the beginning of 2013. Now we're at the beginning of 2015. So I just the newer trends, I just put those on this bike and made it more modern to what was popular in the motorcycle trend at the time. So I was putting this bike together, and the whole point of building it was we were rebranding the shop. We had just started the Instagram page for the Fast Life Garage, December, January-ish, and we were kind of getting ready to do stuff. So, we were just kind of getting ready to kind of launch this new, venture with the Fast Life Garage. We started building a lot of clientele up in Dallas again and things like that. And, we just kind of had some momentum going. So we were trying to capitalize off of that. And I knew that, that traveling was kind of wearing on both me and Brita. So we just needed to kind of get to a point where we had some stationary kind of stability. So the house, getting a shop, and doing all this was kind of like that push, I guess is the right word. So we were building this bike, man, and, doing all this work. it was a really awesome time because like, you know, that dude Brad I told you I met at going to Sturgis, he literally lived right across the highway, and my house was right off the highway, so he was super close. He was always over at the house, hanging out, and then my bike club was coming out. So we had this garage. It was 3 days before we were heading out to gonna do this ride to California, and so we're all hanging out the garage, you know, shooting the shit, drinking beer, putting this bike together, just good times, man. Really, like, I don't give a fuck who you are. If you like motorcycles and doing any of this type of shit, a garage, a couple chairs, and a fucking case of beer, and you'll have the time of your life. That's just, I've always thought that, and that's how I look at things, you know, to this day. So, you know, like I said, we were all hanging out in the garage, you know, it was fucking 10, 15 people hanging out. It was just a good fucking time, man. It really was. And it was really exciting getting to go on this first trip. Like I said, you know, the trip to Sturgis and being on the road, going to Cali and then seeing the coast. And it just really reinforced the fact that, you know what, fuck it, I'm doing a cross country ride on this goddamn bagger, right? And my bike club was there to back us up. And, you know, we had dues and all those type of things like that. So we were able to kind of like pay for hotels and all this shit through our club. So it just, you know, it was awesome. Like I said, my club made it possible for me to do a lot of traveling before, you know, but it was like me pushing the club to travel, but it was them that made it possible for it to happen. You know what I mean? So it was a good time, man. And that first year going to, you know, riding to Cali, man, there's a lot of things we learned about riding bikes cross country, man. A lot of things. Weather, different, you know, different areas are colder than hotter, and what to pack and not to pack. And it was just an eye-opening kind of trip, I guess is the best way to put it. So, you know, we went out there, man. It was awesome. We stayed with one of Britta's aunts who lives in Venice Beach, which we still stay with her every time we come out. And, you know, or we didn't stay with them this time, but we stopped through and had lunch with her and decided that the best way to do PCH up to San Francisco was to start at 11 o'clock in the afternoon and start at Venice Beach and ride the highway all the way from Venice Beach all the way to San Francisco. That was the dumbest idea I ever had in my life. So we didn't even fucking get on to actual PCH by like San Luis Obispo until like 5:36. It took, you know, 5 hours just to ride the coast from there through like Santa Barbara and fucking Oxnard and Ventura and all that shit. You know what I mean? So, but it made for one of the best experiences I've ever had on PCH, because right when we got close to like Big Sur, man, the sun started setting on the ocean, and it just made probably one of the highlights of me ever being able to ride a bike. Like, I don't advise this for anybody, but riding PCH is the shit. But if you can somehow ride PCH as the sun's going down, it's fucking amazing, right? So it was just a great thing. But then it still sucked because, you know, the sun's finally down. We just passed Big Sur, so we're like halfway to fucking from San Luis Obispo to Monterey. Like, Big Sur is kind of halfway, so we still got all this other half to ride. And, you know, and we're going to Livermore that night to stay. That's where our hotel was. So it was a fucking sketchy ride, but, you know, we did it. We made it, and we learned when and where to ride PCH. And, you know, like I said, those trips they teach you a lot of shit on like how to travel, when's a good time to take this trip or whatever. And I didn't really know a lot of people that was riding bikes across country at the time, so I didn't have anybody to reach out to and be like, hey man, you know, when's the best time to ride PCH, or where would you start at? Would you skip this part? Would you know what I mean? So I'm glad that when people ask me like my opinions about certain trips or certain routes, I can give them honest opinions about it. So that's kind of a good thing, I think, right? Anyway, so, you know, that first trip to Cali was awesome. You know, I've told many stories about those trips on these podcasts, and like I said, I don't really want to get too deep into the specifics on that type of stuff, but, you know, needless to say, it really, you know, started watering that planted seed of wanting to travel on bikes. Still not like as hardcore about it as I am now, right? But we're gonna get there. So we get back from that. I found the shop, you know, the one that I wanted fell through, but I ended up finding another one in my hometown of Duncanville, Texas, where I grew up and went to high school and stuff, and ended up setting up there. It was a small place, but man, we just started booming. You know, the paint job I did on my bagger, you know, I airbrushed it, I started really developing my own style of like graphics that, for a painter, like I said, we haven't really talked a lot about the painting aspect of it, but through all the previous podcasts and all the paint work I'd done, like I really started to develop my own style of graphics that really started to flourish and be visible on the baggers when I started doing those. So when I did my white bagger, it was kind of like it spoke to a lot of people because it looked a lot more different than what a lot of the bigger shops in the country was doing. So I ended up doing a really badass green bike for this shop called Scrub Cycles, who he wanted me to paint his bike because he likes my white bike. So I did his bike, and it was another bike that I really kind of showed my ass on, and that got me a shit ton of work. So 2015 was like this blossoming year of work coming from all over Texas, and I started getting work from Ohio and Kansas and Memphis and like Arkansas and all kinds of crazy shit. It was just a good year, for that kind of stuff. We we were just banging bikes out, all big wheel baggers, decent paychecks on them, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Probably I think the highest one I did was like $7,500 at that point in time. I was getting $7,500 paint a bike. So I was happy, man. Like money was good. The profit margin was good too. We still had a lot of kinks in our work and our quality. Jesse kind of came and started working full time with me at this point. He's kind of out of high school and whatnot, and he was kind of like at a point, I think he was like 18 or some shit like that. So or 19, I don't remember 100%, but he came and started working at the shop, and it was kind of good, man. Like I said, he'd already been working with me for so long off and on that he had the skills, at least the beginning stages of the skills that needed to do everything that we were doing. So it was good, man. It was really good at that point in time. This year for Sturgis on 2015, man, it was hands down my favorite year I've ever been to Sturgis. Last year was amazing for different reasons, but this year was awesome because my entire bike club, my best friend Brad, we all went out there. It was like 15 of us. We all rode. We had talked about riding the year before, like when we were in the trailer. We were like, man, we got to ride out here. So this year we did it. We rode. And like I said, my club made these things possible for me to do and experience. So our club our dues ended up paying for a big ass house in Hill City, and it held 15 people, and we all had this place, had a hot tub. It was in the hills, so it was cool, man. It was just awesome having everybody that was close to me there. It was just an amazing experience, man. It really was. And they ended up shooting my bagger, the white one that I had done there, and they ended up shooting it up at that graffiti alley down there in Rapid City. So that was a pretty cool thing too, and I had became good friends with the photographer. His name was Jesse Nelson, and he's a fucking amazing photographer. He used to shoot for all of the stuff for American Bagger and Urban Bagger. He's the one that shot my orange bike earlier, in Arizona for the cover of the American Bagger. So really good dude, and we became friends, and I had his number, and then a year later I kind of got into photography, and he kind of helped coach me in a lot of things, as far as learning how to do stuff. But anyway, so Sturgis was really great that year because I had all my friends there, and I had my club there, and I had my best friend there, and it was just a good experience, man. And we were we just had a fucking blast, man. It was great. We rode there. We rode I forgot to say this, but we rode to California earlier when I talked about we actually did the Iron Butt. So we did the Iron Butt from here to Phoenix. Chandler I think is the town we went to, which is right at 1,100 miles. So we did the Iron Butt there. And then the rest of our club, because we had made a bylaw where you pretty much had to do the Iron Butt to patch over, right? And so we had a couple of prospects that were trying to get patched over. So we did the Iron Butt again on the way to Sturgis. We rode from here to Laramie, Wyoming. And that was also a great experience as well. Yeah, man, like I said, 2015 was like kind of like the year where I started, subconsciously not knowing why I was so in tune with the traveling, but I just was. And, I fitted it into my life, you know what I mean? And I was able to use the reasons of motorcycle business, a motorcycle based business, as also using the travel to go do motorcycle shit. So it kind of worked it worked well together, And then, like I said, we didn't really have any drama. There was nothing really going on, I think at this point in time, like I stopped depending on so many people in my life to get things done and do things, and I was more self-sufficient. So, you know, there just wasn't a whole lot of negative things going back and forth between me and other shops and me and other people. I mean, the beef with me and Gary were still kind of there, but it wasn't relevant anymore. You know, I was doing my own thing. I was starting to pull work from out of state. So we weren't really trying to eat out of the same pot anymore. You know, it was just kind of like the drama started to leave. You know what I mean? So it was good. Like I said, I feel like I found a way to eliminate all those negative things that kind of was dragging me down and you know, that I talked about in the previous podcast. I just eliminated it all. You know, I became I started to depend on myself instead of depending on other people. You know what I mean? In one way or another. You know what I mean? I still depended on a lot of people to get through, but it's just a figure of speech of some of it, you know. But so, like I said, 2015 was good, man. You know, we did Lone Star Rally. We did, you know, a lot of fun shit, man. I remember Lone Star Rally was dope because Jesse came and that All-Star Baggers place let him ride one of their like what do they call them, the Ruckuses. So, you know, we're all on big wheel baggers, fucking stereos blazing, just, you know, being big wheel bagger guys, you know. And Jesse's ripping around, fucking on a little fucking, Ruckus, just kind of keeping up with us and shit. It was pretty cool. I had a great time that year. And we used to always get me and my club every year for Lone Star. We would rent this little like condo thing on the beach. It was like a condo complex, but it was on the beach. And every year we would go there and we would just have a big ass bonfire. So realistically, I enjoyed the bonfire more than anything else, just hanging out with all the homies and drinking beer and that kind of stuff. So if any of you guys want to do that this year, let's do it. Anyway, so 2015 was a great year, man. And like I said, we, you know, with the use of Instagram and showing the world what we were doing on these big wheel baggers, we started to get people reaching out to us, wanting us to build baggers for them that were, you know, rideable across country. Now, don't get me wrong, I had issues on my bike, but because I work on bikes to some degree, like they weren't things that I couldn't get solved and get back on the road. Like, not every guy, the average guy is going to spend $40,000 to $70,000 to have a custom bagger built. A, is not going to want to have to fix anything on the road, and B, probably might not know how to do that shit. You know what I mean? So I could see how for some people having issues or having setbacks on road trips on your bike could really ruin the trip for you. But I found that for me, I guess because we have a little bit of a mechanical ability, it's made the trips more enjoyable or more, what's the word? Like it's like you're working harder to enjoy your time. So that time becomes more valuable, right? Well, anyway, 2016, you know, kind of gets to roll now. Now, 2016 is a year that, like, it was a good year in a million ways and probably one of the shittiest years of my life, right? But so, like, it was, put it like this, it was a shitty year, but it was necessary in every aspect of what happened for me to have evolved to where I'm at now, right? So, the beginning of the year, like I said, we had people reaching out to us wanting us to build bikes and stuff like that. And at this time, mind you, it's just me and Jesse. You know, we ended up moving into a slightly larger shop right next door to the shop that I had in Duncanville. And so we had this huge ass shop. It was like 3,000 square foot space, like workspace, and then another 1,500 square foot office space and showroom and all this shit. So it was the perfect shop. I wish I could get it back right now. Badass shop. So we moved in there, we started setting it up, and if you follow me on Instagram or you haven't followed for a while, you can scroll back and see this shit. It's all there. It's on the timeline, you know what I mean? So Brad started helping me out. We painted the walls. We started putting like that wood plank shit up on one wall, and we just started decking this place out. And like I said, money was good. Like I was doing repair work for like a local like resale place here called American Motorcycle Trading Company. So I had like these fenders coming in, just black fenders with dings or chips or whatever. And so those little $300, $400, $500 repair jobs that I could knock, and they would send me 5 or 6 at a time. So it's like quick little $2,000 checks, you know, for a week's worth, you know, for like a day's worth of work every week. You know, I had a lot of money floating around, you know what I mean, as far as in the shop is concerned. So we started investing a lot into the shop and trying to make it look cool, and started taking on these builds and, you know, still doing the paint work as well. So it showed me that, you know, like you can easily, if you're doing good work or you're doing the right thing in your business, and this is one thing that I don't think that I realized, and even to this point, I just now, you know, within the last year, just realized, you know, like I might have said this on the last podcast, but like every time you feel like you solve some problems in your life, there's other problems that are going to come around that you didn't even think could ever or would ever be a problem, right? So here I am, you know, the whole thought process in doing my shop was that I'm used to like Gary and his Other Side Customs. Like, man, it's about being the biggest dude. It's about having the biggest, baddest shop, the most employees, doing the biggest things. And, you know, so I was 100% always trying to work towards being what's going to what's going to get us more work, be bigger, be this, be that. And so I'm taking in all these jobs and things like that. And also we're building Brad's bike. You know, we're doing a full frame off build on Brad's bike. And this one customer dropped his bike off in December, and, you know, with the intentions of only changing out the wheels, we were going to add more paint work to the existing custom paint job we'd already did on his bike. He had bought a new gas tank, a new front fender, and we were going to match it to the paint job that he had already had. But while he was sitting in our shop and he saw the work we were doing on Brad's bike, he started adding more things that he wanted to do. And then he saw that we had the ability to, you know, get some metal fabrication done. So he was like, man, I want you to do a custom metal front chin spoiler. And hey, I want you to pull my motor out and paint the frame. And hey, the list kept getting bigger every day. And where I fucked up is that I was so, you know, I used to be so concerned with like pleasing customers, like making them like 100% number one, to where I didn't want to like piss them off. I didn't want them to be mad. I didn't want them to be uncertain. I didn't want to say no, right? So when he kept asking me to do all this more shit, I was like, fuck, man, this bike's gonna be badass. I'm excited to do it. Like I'm excited to build this bike. Not really realizing that all this work he's adding on is adding on a lot of fucking time. Like, it's not gonna be a 2-month build anymore. Not with the fact that, you know, I have to make $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month to cover all my bills. And you're not paying me $10,000 a month to build this bike. So, like I said, this dude was the worst customer I've ever had in my life. But it's also because I didn't know how to structure our business relationship from the jump street, right? And I'm gonna elaborate on this a little bit more, because this was a huge lesson, and the icing on this lesson is a fucked up thing. But check it out. So like I said, we started building bikes. He wanted us to do a bike for him, or he wanted to be able to ride like we ride the bikes. And so, I'm like, fuck it. I want to be known I want to be the guy that builds big wheel baggers that you can pound across the country. Like that's a good title. I want that, So, we start making the momentum. We start working on the bike. And like I said, every month he starts adding more to it. He's like, oh man, I want you to have my neck recut and redone. So we took it all the way to the frame and took it to Misfit, and they put their new neck system on it. And, then, like I said, it spiraled into a huge build, right? And at first it was cool. I was like, dude, we're building Brad's bike because we're riding to California again in April. Now, mind you, this is 2016. So we were building this bike to ride in April. And, it was a nice bike, man. It was really cool. It was like a lime green color. It looked just like my white bagger, but green. So we got it done. And while we were getting it done, like I said, this customer kept seeing all the things that I was doing to Brad's bike, and he wanted me to do it to his, but in, his taste. So we did the California trip that year, and it was awesome. That was when I first got to see Monument Valley, which I know you've heard me talk millions of times about. So that was when we took that route. We rode PCH again. We did it the right way this time. We left at the right time and rode the right parts, where we got to experience the best parts. We also pulled into Arizona Bike Week at this point in time too, on the way back, and we went to the Baddest Bagger show. And we're on an ego, or what do you call it? Like an ego trip or whatever. Like we're on, or at least I was on fucking cloud nine. Fuck yeah, dude. I rode my bike here. I just rode from Dallas to San Francisco, and now I'm in Arizona checking out your bike show. What's up? Who's doing anything like that? You know what I mean? That's kind of my attitude, right? And of course, nobody gives a fuck. So, I'm getting mad. I'm like, man, why does nobody care about people putting miles? And I think it wasn't the people, man. There was this like announcer dude walking around announcing for the Baddest Bagger, and he kept going and interviewing like all the shops that had big ass trailers there. Like, oh man, you came from Alabama, Curly's Custom Cycles came from fucking Indiana or wherever they're from. Like, he was like putting these dudes on a map that trailered their shit. So it kind of put me And if you heard the last podcast I did with Garley, man, this is kind of where this is at. And this is where I started talking lots of shit online. Is that, you know, doing these bike trips and having the people that were close to us kind of like reinforcing what I was doing to me and telling me, oh, dude, what you're doing is badass. And like so many people telling you that what you're doing is good. It kind of makes you feel like, well, why the fuck isn't everybody else telling me I'm good? You know, why aren't they not on like seeing what we're doing over here, and why aren't they kissing our ass or whatever, you know? And so when this announcer guy was like pumping up all these shops that had been trailering their bikes, and you know, these bikes were all fucking like, you know, no riding done on them, you know what I mean? Like I just couldn't grasp the concept of building a bike that you can't ride, you know, but as I've said in that podcast with Garley, I've come to terms with those thoughts. But just take this ride at this point in time. I just did not think like that. I didn't give a fuck who you are. If you built the bike and you didn't ride it, you're a piece of shit to me. You know what I mean? And so we're there, and you know, like our bikes didn't win shit, which let's be honest. I just rode my bike cross country. Both of our bikes got chips in it now. There's bugs between the fins of the fucking motor. How the fuck are we going to compete against one of these nice pristine bikes that just pulled off a thing? And that's the thing that I didn't realize then, because I knew my bikes looked good, but they weren't show bikes on the fucking showroom. You know what I mean? And that's one thing now that I can tell a customer is like, look, there's something badass about having a good looking bike that you can pound across country, but there's almost it's almost impossible for it to actually be a show bike and compete with bikes that get trailered around everywhere. So you just got to kind of know how to word those things and let people know. But anyway, you know, that trip to California was good. My club also, again, on this deal helped make it happen. Brad actually went on the trip with us this year. Lots of great stories, lots of great times on that trip. You know what I mean? So it was dope. You know, we get back, you know what I'm saying? And right at this time, and I know you've heard this story as well, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but right when we get back, the day we got back, I remember I started casually starting to follow different types of bike people on social media. You know, like I said, this travel thing and this camping, or not even camping yet, just riding bikes. I was into bike travel, you know what I mean? Not like what I am now about like adventure riding and all that, but just I wanted to see dudes who were pounding their bikes, you know what I mean? That's what I wanted to see. And so I started following different places. I think I started following some chopper places like Chopper Supply Co. and shit like that. And so somebody had posted like, oh, check out this 21 Days Under the Sky thing. And I got home, you know, back to Dallas pretty early in the day, and me and Britta were going to go get tattoos that night. So I had a couple hours to kill, and, you know, like I said, I just rode across country. So, you know, that 21 Days Under the Sky came out on fucking Netflix. So I popped it in, and like literally, dude, not even, but by the time it was done, I text Brad, it's like, you gotta watch this, blah blah blah. And I was like, man, like we just did that on Baggers, man. And so like it got me thinking, like, man, maybe this scene, like what I want to do on bikes isn't popular in this scene, you know what I mean? And so I was like, man, like I don't know, man, I just wanted to go somewhere else. I wanted to be around a different crowd, you know. And it was not the crowd, it was me. Like the Big Wheel Bagger crowd is the Big Wheel Bagger crowd. But I think that it's all the perspective of how you're looking at them. So like I said, I don't want to sit here and say that everybody in the Big Wheel Bagger community is a fucking douche, right? It's fun to say, and it's laughable, but you know, that's not the truth. You know what I mean? There's a lot of crazy, amazing people out there that do some badass things, whether it's their builds or their fucking talent or their ideas or whatever, you know what I mean? Things that I will never accomplish in life. There are dudes on Big Wheel Baggers doing that type of shit. So, you know what I mean? For sure, respect to all those kind of guys, but it's still funny to make fun of you guys sometimes. So, you know, just got to deal with it. But anyway, you know, I just realized that, like, man, maybe I've grown out of this scene. I've grown out of this type of stuff. The wavelength that I'm starting to come to, you know, is just, it's not for this. Like I you know what I mean? Like I'm wanting respect from my peers in a scene that doesn't really care about riding bikes across country. And also, these dudes can afford big ass dualies and trailers, and I can't. So, you know, maybe there's a little hate in me. I don't know what the deal is. But needless to say that where I am on my mindset and wavelength and where these people are operating in the Big Wheel Bagger community, I didn't fit into that anymore, right? That's the most honest way to put that, you know? I will say that there are a lot of people that I felt like were kind of assholes and not really doing great things for the scene. But like I said, what they were doing for the scene was just not great in my eyes. What I thought the scene should be doing. You know what I mean? Like I said, I have that leadership mentality all the time. So, you know, I'm an opinionated person, right? So it's not a good combination sometimes, but you know, anyway. So when we got back, man, I started looking at other bikes, man. So at the end of April, I ended up, you know, I wanted a chopper. I wanted to go that route, but I was kind of scared. I wasn't like confident enough in my ability and what I knew about choppers. But I knew in the dyno world, between Steve and all my connections in NorCal, if I had any questions or anything, like these dudes have been doing it for years. And so anything I needed or any direction I wanted to go, I had people that I could depend on to help me out or show me what's cool and what's not cool. You know what I mean? So I ended up picking up a dyno. It was a 09 Super Glide. Got it from some used bike place around here in Dallas. It was funny as hell because like when I got it, you know, had a blonde motor, it had fucking ape hangers, and you know, it had mid controls, which was cool. It had a really shitty like Mustang seat that was like looked like a couch cushion or whatever. But the bike salesman had like a Sons of Anarchy fucking ringtone. It was funny as shit. Jesse drove me up there to pick it up. His ringtone happened. We both looked at each other like with this like, do we laugh right now or wait till we go outside kind of look. But anyway, I got that bike, man, and fuck, as soon as I got it, dude, I T-bars on the way. I had ordered a seat, ordered a Conley's fairing, you know, all that stuff, and kind of got the bike just set up looking decent with that. And man, I rode that bike every fucking day. You know, I had the big wheel bagger, but I was just more in tune with the dyno. Like I was more enjoying the ride of the dyno. You know what I mean? But anyway, so it's April. This one bagger customer I was mentioning before I went on that tangent there was he's still around, and he's starting to get more irritated about the time frames on his bike. Not really being fair to me because he kept adding more and more to the deal, but in his, I guess, defense, my fucked up thing was I was not telling him that it's going to take longer now because you added this. I was like, man, I'll try to fit that in. I'm going to try to fit that out. And next thing you know, he fit in 6 more months worth of work that I'm having to try to bang out in a month. And I didn't have the balls to just tell this dude, like, no, we can't do that unless you give me the time. So needless to say, me and Britta, you know, we're getting married in May of 2016, May 15th. And it's coming up on that date. And, you know, I'm not getting a lot of shit done on this bike. It's not going as fast as I want it to. And so we have to postpone our honeymoon till 2 weeks after May 15th. So we ended up going 3 weeks. It was 3 weeks because I wanted to give myself enough time after the 4 days I took off to get married. I wanted to get this bike done because I didn't want to go out of town and be like dealing with this dude, right? So, I mean, this bike, the reason why it's such a big deal is because this bike probably would have been, you know, if this bike would have been done and finished by me, then I mean, I could be in a different world right now. You know what I mean? There's always those projects that like, if you got the opportunity to build it with the money and with the direction this customer is going, that could really change a business. You know, being the difference between being, you know, a local name or being something that's nationally known because you built something sick. And I think this bike might have done some amazing things for us. I mean, there was a lot of cool shit going on, and I don't want to get too many details about the bike, but needless to say, it was a lot of fucking money going in this bike, and not necessarily a lot of money going in my pocket. So another fault of mine was that I was more interested in doing this bike to say that I did it and show the world what I'm capable of, that, you know, I was willing to do a lot of it for nothing for this customer. So not only am I not really getting paid very much, I'm also getting bitched out. I'm getting, you know, I'm getting those like I'm irritated texts. You know what I mean? I ended up getting a second cell phone just so that I can leave my shop phone at the house. I mean, at the shop because of this guy. And needless to say, you know, I did the paint job. It was pretty dope. It was kind of a panel thing, but it was kind of like my version of a panel back then before I really knew how to do panels. You know what I'm saying? So there was a lot of different things going on with it that, you know, is not really relative to the way I paint things now. But, you know, it was still a cool paint job, man. It was really badass. And it was coming together. The dude wasn't really, you know, like I said, I was like, hey, do you think I could throw some airbrush work on here? I think it'll really kind of jazz it up and make it look good. The dude had like some sugar skulls in his bag liners, right? So I was like, fuck, man, he's like, yeah, dude, you could do whatever. And I had asked him this months before I did it. So I didn't remember the fact that he had told me that he doesn't like skulls. But I just assumed because he had bag liners that had skulls on it that, that would be okay. So needless to say, I did a skull on the rear fender, sent him a picture of it, and then it was late at night. And then the next morning, he just blew the fuck up on me about putting a skull on his rear fender. And to the point where I was like already super irritated with the guy and, just not happy. I just like, dude, you know what? Just come get your shit. I'm done. I can't deal with it anymore. And don't get me wrong. When this dude came and got his stuff, it was a very stressful thing. I've never done this. I've never had a customer. It's never came to this with any customers ever in my life. But this particular deal, man, it just got to a point where I could not do it. I was really, really going insane dealing with this customer. I couldn't please him. He was a very needy, demanding customer that, I just couldn't, this dude wasn't spending 40, 50 grand, but he had the mindset that he was. And like I said, I don't want to put all this blame on that customer because there's a cause and effect for everything. The cause is that I wasn't upfront with him and made my stand of what type of business relationship this is going to be from day one. So I gave this dude inches. He kept taking inches. Next thing you know, I'm fucking 6 feet deep in this dude and in this project, and I'm not making any money on it. So I had to cut my ties. And so, needless to say, the dude comes and picks up his bike. His wife's more of a pain in the ass to deal with than he is. I ended up having Jesse, it was unfinished. So I ended up refunding him $2,500 just to get this dude out of my fucking life, right? And I had Jesse video it, the whole conversation. I had him sign a paper saying that we had no responsibility for anything that he's taken out of this shop. It's an unfinished project. I just didn't want him to take it to another shop and them start saying, oh, this and this and this, you know what I mean? Like every shop does. And that's what happened. But anyway, the bigger point of this dude in this story is that this dude was a pain in the ass, and at the time I was unaware. I was more thinking of myself as a victim. And in a lot of ways I was, but at the same time, I'm also a victim because of my lack of business knowledge of how to handle this type of customer and this type of situation, right? But the real funny thing and the fucked up thing is that day he picked up his bike. The next day, me and my wife were going on our honeymoon. So that next day, 7 a.m., we're jumping on a plane. We're out of there for 6 or 7 days. And this guy comes up, picks up the bike. I'm kind of like relieved and happy, and just the anxiety's gone, the struggle's gone. It's like fuck, like so me, Brad's wife, and Britta, like we're like fuck, let's go celebrate. So we all go to Buffalo Wild Wings, have a good time, get some beer, drinking. Like fuck that dude, he's a piece of shit, blah blah blah. Britta and Brad's wife end up leaving, and me and Brad end up staying because we used to be some fucking gangsters when it came to drinking beer. We go fucking hard. You know what I mean? I stopped drinking about an hour before we left. He was fucking. Brad was kept going. He was done. He was pretty gone. You know what I mean? So we jumped in the truck. We only lived 3 miles from Buffalo Wild Wings, and that's all it took for me to get pulled over and get a DWI. So needless to say, I went to sleep in a jail cell that night. Woke up at, we missed the flight. Woke up late. I got bailed out of jail that morning. And next thing you know, we're on a plane headed to our honeymoon. And then that kind of ruined the honeymoon because, I don't know if you ever got a DWI, but this is my first and only one. And it was just kind of like, holy fuck, like, is my life over? Like, I've never really been on any kind of like jail. I've been to jail plenty of times, but not like on any serious things like a DWI. So I'm very nervous about it. Brad had a DWI before, so he was kind of telling me the ins and outs of it, but it was a very uncertain thing. But it just sucks because I placed that DWI and that experience on top of like this customer. Like, oh, that fucking DWI is this guy's fault too, like, yeah, it's my fucking fault. But, and I will say that the transaction probably, encouraged the DWI with that customer, you know what I mean? But like I just stated, man, me and Brad was on another level of drinking beer back then, and this is 2016. So we were, either A, we were going to fucking get ourselves killed, fucking riding bikes around, being as hammered drunk as we'd get out and doing stuff, or B, you know, like I had rode those bikes or just been out drinking and driving in a way that, put it like this, when I got drunk or when I got pulled over and got the DWI, I didn't even feel drunk. You know what I mean? And I blew like 2 times over, and I was like, holy shit. So, you know, those times when I'm like driving home with one eye open or whatever, like those are the times I'm glad I didn't get pulled over, but I'm also glad I didn't die. So needless to say that DWI, as fucked up as it's been, and I'm still on paper for it, you know, I'll be off probation in fucking January of next year. But it was a lesson, man. It was something that had to calm my ass down. You know what I mean? And it's crazy, right? Because I didn't start drinking until I was 29 or 30 or whatever, and then went so fucking hard in the paint. You know, it's just crazy, man. But anyway, like I said, the momentum's still going good at the shop. This DWI kind of fucked things up a little bit. The other crazy thing about 2016 that I didn't really mention is that me and Steve started doing a lot of work together still. You know, the guy Trendsetters up in NorCal. So basically it got to a point where, you know, my graphic style was getting really popular in the bagger scene. So he had multiple people wanting me to do these baggers and to do these graphics and shit like that. So fortunately, from Dallas to Oakland, you know, the Spirit Airlines, there was a $200 round trip ticket that was every day. Every day Spirit went from here at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or something like that to Oakland, direct flight. So I was able to leave here at 6 a.m. and get to Oakland at 8 o'clock or something like that. And then they had a direct flight from Oakland home from Spirit every day at like 4:30 or 5:30 or 6:30, right around there. I was getting back here at 9 or 10 o'clock every day. So it started out the first 2 or 3 times I went up there. Put like this, I flew to California 15 times in 2016 to do work. And the first couple of times it was like I'd go out there for 3 days. We do one job, you know, knock out the graphics, pinstripe it, do a little bit of shading, blah, 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 head home, make 5, 6, 7. Actually, I was making $1,000. It was like $500 a day is what I was charging them. And then it got to a point where it's like, you know, Steve can do some actual graphics himself. So it got to a point where he's like, hey, man, I'm going to fly you out here. Just lay out some graphics on this bike, and then I'll fly you home. So I would literally fly out there. He'd pick me up at the airport. We'd drive all the way to Stockton. I'd lay out graphics on a bagger, everything. He would back tape it himself. I would just do all the fine line work. He'd take me back to the airport, and I'd fly home. And we did that a couple times, man. And then right after our what do you call it? Our honeymoon, I flew back out there for like 2 weeks to do a lot of projects, some big things. So it's like I was going out there to make like 10 or 15 grand doing, you know, like 3 weeks worth of work. You know, who doesn't want to make money like that, right? So I was going out there to do 3 weeks worth of work. I ended up only getting like 2 of the jobs done. So I only make like 10 grand or so. And then, you know, and then when I got back from that, it was July and I had to get ready for Sturgis. So we were doing Sturgis again. And this year they were going to take pictures of Brad's bike for the magazine, for the Urban Bagger and stuff. So we did Sturgis again. We rode again. This time the club participation was a lot down. I mean, it was only like maybe 5 of us total that went. You know, it wasn't like the year before. And so all of 2016 with my club, things were really starting to die off. Like their enthusiasm, like I was ripping and running, riding across country. Like I was going 100 miles an hour, and these guys were kind of like, they couldn't do it. They couldn't get the vacations. They couldn't do a lot of things. So I found myself doing a lot more things without them. And eventually by the end of the year, that's kind of why I ended up, you know, leaving the club, is just because I didn't feel like, you know, I needed it or whatever. I don't know what the right word is, but I just felt like I was already doing all this shit, or I don't know. I really don't know. I'll address it in a minute. But anyway, we did Sturgis again. It was good. I ended up having like 2 more customers that year that we kind of got sideways with. And I think that maybe the sideways thing was another business transaction where it was like an insurance job. So it was a full frame off Street Glide, just a horrible deal. It was $20,000 worth of, you know, damage and work that had to be replaced. And, you know, it was a long process, you know what I mean? And the customer kind of got all butthurt at the end of it. You know, I'm not going to say that it wasn't my fault or it was his fault or whatever, but it was stressful. You know what I mean? Dealing with that. And this is when I realized that, you know, it's hard for me to paint bikes and build bikes, right? So I kind of need to pick one or the other. And then it's also super hard when you're painting bikes and building bikes and you're doing it on baggers that are very, very time consuming and space consuming, right? So, 2016, like I said, it was it was a great year. It was a shitty year. So, it was awesome because I was, doing a lot of traveling, started riding a lot more. I fell in love with the Dyna, I ended up taking that to Sturgis with me. I took the bagger, but we took a chase vehicle and a trailer, and we took the Dyna. Rode the bagger for a couple days, and then, then me and Britta pulled off the fucking Dyna, and we ended up riding that thing all over Sturgis. Had a lot more fun on that than the bagger. And I ended up riding the Dyna home from Sturgis, and then to this day, I never rode that bagger again, the big wheel. Last time I ever rode it was from Sturgis to Hill City, and that was the last trip I ever took on that bagger, or ride in general. So anyway, we get back come August or September. I'm on Instagram, man. I'm peeping out all this shit these chopper dudes are doing and this Dyna stuff. I start really diving into these other cultures of motorcycles, and I find out that there's a place called Chopper Supply out in Fort Worth. And so, I rode out there, and, me and Britta was out hanging out one Saturday or something like that, and we ended up riding out there, and the dude that owns the place, Kenny, was there. And he was super inviting, man, super cool, super fucking awesome guy, man. He just, he hung out, he talked to us. I told him kind of like my bagger story, and I was probably like a super downer type. My personality was a lot more negative at the time. And since I met him, and he was such a positive person, that it made me realize how much of a negative person I was, where almost all of my conversation was negativity. You know what I mean? And so it made me aware of myself in a much different way, like talking to, Kenny and being around his personality. And I think that's what culture shocked me so hard, being around the chopper people and the Dyna people at first. And like you said, I've talked about this stuff in my podcast where I really try to dive in deep and talking about why like the bagger scene sucks because of the people. And yes, the people are way different, but I don't want to say they suck. It's just more like I didn't vibe with those people anymore or whatever, But anyway, like Kenny was just such a solid dude, man. It was just like, it was a breath of fresh air, and the enthusiasm he had for older bikes and this, that, and the other, and the camaraderie I felt like it was in the chopper scene, was just like super fucking like enticing or inviting or whatever you want to say, So needless to say, he was super hospitable. He hung out. We ended up going to have lunch together, and I was just talking about I wanted to do a chopper, but I wasn't quite ready. At this time, I made a deal to sell my bagger to somebody, and it was just kind of like, I thought it was going to happen any day. I was going to get like 20 something grand for this bike or whatever the case may be, and I was going to go buy a chopper. I had the Dyna, but I was also going to go buy a chopper. But anyway, he ended up inviting us to the Southern Throwdown, which is something they do out in September, and I went out there to his they had a party over there, and it was just cool meeting everybody. Got to meet like Scott from Chemical Candy, and JP Rodman, and Max Schaaf, or Schaff, or however you say it. And, Dan was there, Danger Dan was there, but I didn't really get to meet him at the time. But, when I was there, when I showed up, there's this huge ass party going, and Kenny really took the time to introduce me to everybody. And I was like, dude, I'm just some fucking bagger dude on a Dyna out here trying to fit in with your scene. And the hospitality was like amazing, right? So I was like, fuck, man, these people are rad. So I, of course, become a big fan of Chopper Supply and all the shit they're doing. And even to this day, like falling in with that crowd is, I'm doing a podcast because of it. If you want to like see the lineage of it, you know what I mean? But anyway, that was a cool thing. Also, my buddy Steve, he used to do a lot of legal shit in a way, drug stuff back in the day, nothing bad, just, weed, shit like that. But so at the end of 2016, he was going to go serve 2 years for, all the weed, marijuana growth type thing that was going on in NorCal a couple years back. So he was like really trying to push for, between September and October, because he was going in November. He was really trying to push getting a lot of bikes done. So I ended up going out there for 3 weeks in September, and we banged out a lot of bikes. And man, we used to it was a good time, man. It was really fun hanging out with him those last couple of months before he went in. And I haven't seen him yet since he's gone to jail, but he just got out recently. He's on like the halfway house and all that shit. But it was cool, man. So that 3 months, that 3 weeks that I was there, we were, hanging out, and I decided I was going to do a build on the Dyna, or customization on the Dyna, to get it ready for Dixon Flannel was throwing a party. at the end of October. It was like just a big warehouse party. A hot bike was going to be there and all this type of shit. So I was like, fuck, man, I want to go check this out. And, while I'm out there, I'm like thinking about what I'm going to do to my bike, and I start buying some parts. Then I had to fly home right at the end of September because my birthday is the end of September. So I was home for like 2 weeks. And so while I was there, I stripped down the Dyna, painted the frame, Cerakoted the motor gray, stuff like that. Yeah, so we were just, I was there and I was just trying to like do what I could because I knew I had to go back to Cali again, like the first half of October to help Steve finish out the rest of these bikes and stuff, right? So I got everything I could get done, and I started ordering all these parts. So basically, when I got home at the end of October, or at mid to end, so that I can get the bike done before the Dixon Flannel Party. I was like drawing sketches and all this type of stuff, trying to figure out what I wanted to do on the bike and figure out the direction, the colors, and ordered all these parts. And that way it'd all be there when I got home and ready to go. So when I got home, my dude Adam Garley came out, and it was a crazy thing, man. Like, because I ended up staying 3 extra days in NorCal to do one bike for a customer that paid me a shit ton of money to stay. And so it was cutting in because the Dixon Flannel Party was going to be on Friday. I was going to be flying home the Friday before, and I was going to have that entire week to build the Dyna, and then I was going to ride the Dyna from Dallas to Phoenix. But I didn't end up getting home till Monday. So I had Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to get this Dyna done, and I haven't even painted it yet. And then I'm riding it, what was it? Yeah, I'm riding it Friday morning. I'm leaving at 3 a.m. to head out there. So needless to say, Adam Garley came through. You heard him on this podcast. He came through and stayed at the shop till fucking 3 or 4 in the morning one night, helped me get the bike put together, get it dialed up. I did that whole blue Dyna paint job that I'll post when I post this podcast. I did that whole thing in one day. I came in early, didn't leave till 4 in the morning, did all that pinstripe airbrush work, the colors, the graphics, everything in one day, And we ended up getting that bike done, rode it to fucking the Dixon Flannel thing, man. It was cool, man. Like I said, I was really on a wavelength of travel, and I wanted to ride bikes, and the new experience of seeing all these chopper dudes riding bikes cross country. I was really excited about riding something different than a bagger across country. And what I did when I started getting into this Dyna shit, man, I started looking at like different message boards, like Dynaholics and Texas. We got this like Texas Dynas and FXRs like Facebook page and stuff like that. And so, Brad was supposed to go to fucking the Dixon Flannel show with me. He had bought a Dyna too just a month or two prior to that, so we were both going to ride out there. But he ended up like kind of last minute not being able to make it, so it ended up being a trip that I was going to take solo. And I was kind of nervous about it at first, man, because I'd never really done a solo trip or whatever. And I was just kind of like, fuck, man, like excited but nervous, and even to this day it was an awesome trip. But I was on those little message boards, and I was reaching out like saying, hey, if anybody's going to the Dixon Flannel thing, I'm going to go out there, blah, blah, blah. And no one really, at this point in time, not a lot of dudes in Texas really did a lot of major miles and shit on Dynas, right? Or, trust me, there's people doing major miles on Harleys, but they're not the ones on Instagram, hashtagging big wheel bagger and fucking Dynaholics. You know what I mean? It's usually just some old man that just does miles, or just some dude that's just in his own world, right? So at the time, Mark's like, yeah, I'm gonna head out there, blah blah blah, but he's down in Austin. So I'm like, well, shit, let's link up on the way. And I didn't know this dude from nothing, just a message board dude. You know what I mean? And so I rode the bike. I ended up coming through Carlsbad and Alamogordo in New Mexico, and through White Sands, and ended up meeting up with Mark in Las Cruces. We ended up meeting up at a gas station, and he had another friend, Chris, with him. Another Chris, right? And then it was just a crazy, it was awesome meeting him that way. And he was riding this fucking old ass FXR, and I didn't know shit about FXRs. I had no fucking clue. I knew there was a dude online named FXR Mike. That's it. And there was, I knew of it because I heard it kind of mentioned here and there on Sons of Anarchy or whatever. But just didn't know much about it, because Dynas was kind of up in NorCal. Like, there's always been a huge FXR culture, but Dynas were definitely more visible up there than FXRs, right? So anyway, you know, I ended up meeting up with a gas station, man, and we shot the shit. We ended up eating some Mexican food there, and you know, he was like hell bent on making it all the way to Phoenix that night. And you know, I'd done it plenty of times, rolled to Phoenix, so I wasn't super pressed about doing it or getting there or whatever. So I don't know, man. It was just like, you know, we jumped on the road, we started riding. I ended up making it all the way to Benson, Arizona, and they kept going all the way to Phoenix. So I just did Benson, stopped, and then I ended up linking back up with them the next day. But I spent the whole weekend with Mark, man, and we talked a lot. He was telling me his plans of starting a shop and this, that, and the other. And, you know, at this point, I kind of like, yeah, man, you know, the shop's cool, man. You could do this, you know, because I'd already done it. So I felt like I was the go-to guy for information, you know what I mean? Needless to say, that was the beginning of me and Mark's relationship, you know, strange as that might sound. Now, that's when I met him, man. That's how, you know, you've heard Mark on this podcast plenty of times, and, you know, we met, and I know we've said it, we met in a gas station parking lot in New Mexico. So, like I said, that, you know, being out there with him, riding back, we took the long way home, and, you know, it was a great experience, and we talked a lot, and I got to bounce ideas, and I really, cleaned it, or I don't know what the best way to, I really liked hanging out with guys like Mark because it was a new conversation, it was different. We were talking about things, and you know, he had interesting point of views about stuff and business. And even though he's a little bit younger than me, he still had a very, just a very grown up view of things. And then like hearing his crazy backstory was always like, you know, like, damn, how are you so smart now? You seem like you did some stupid shit growing up, but I guess we all have in our own, levels of it, I guess you'd say. But you know, like I said, man, that was the end of, that was November 2016. You know, it's like I said, this is one really shitty year for me business wise, and a lot of downs, man. But on another level, you know, as far as riding and traveling and getting married and you know, kind of meeting this new crowd, this new scene, it was a great year, but also a shitty year. You know, being on the high of like interested in the Dynas and falling in love with the type of bike and you know, wanting to know more about FXRs and what that culture was about, like, you know, I owe it to Instagram just being able to give me all the content I could look at, you know, whether it's from Dynaholics or, you know, fucking Dynamite Crew or FXRs of California, all these different pages and all these different people that really show us what kind of cool shit is out there, you know what I mean? So, you know, I'm not known in the FXR Dyna scene at all, you know what I mean? At this point, 2016, nobody fucking knows me, you know what I mean? Like, there's the painters like, you know, like Schultz and Valley Customs and all the other dudes out there in Cali and Boosted Brad and all these other people that are already kind of well established in the scene and have been doing it for a while and, you know, whatnot. So I knew I could paint that style. I knew I could do the panels. I knew I could pull that stuff off. But, you know, as easy as panel paint jobs technically are from one perspective, what's hard about them, or what can be hard about them, is trying to, you know, take it another step I'm trying to figure out the best way to put it. So my first initial thought of panel paint jobs was just, this shit's fucking easy. That's why I never really pursued it. You know what I mean? It's just I kind of looked at it as if it was beneath me. But in order to get my name out there, man, I was like, fuck, man, how am I going to convince these Dyna dudes to come to me? You know, and I don't really have many Dynas in my portfolio to be like, to be even in the market of the kind of guy people were going to want to find. So I decided that I would do a paint special for $1,000. So for the month of November, which, you know, by this point we're kind of like, you know, a week or so into November, I said on Instagram and on that Texas Dynas page, I just put it out there like, hey, you know, for the rest of November and December, I'll take in X. I was only going to take in, my idea was 5 paint jobs, but I ended up taking in 7. I'll take in X amount of paint jobs for $1,000, right? The colors are up to you, the kind of direction of the style up to you, but the design is up to me, you know. And I put that out there, and like only person that bid on it at first was FXR Mike. And so he ended up reaching out to me, and, you know, he ended up coming through and bringing his FXR. And that's ultimately how him and I met, you know, FXR Mike and I. And so, you know, I kind of knew about FXRs, and then of course hanging out with Mark, I was kind of starting to think more about it. So when FXR Mike came to the shop to drop off his bike, man, I really just wanted to talk. So what's the FXR, blah, blah, blah. Like I wanted to be in a conversation with somebody that is more or less an expert or a real passionate person about these bikes. I wanted to know more about them. I didn't really have any intention of buying one. But I guess talking to Mike for a few minutes, you know, it just kind of, it got me to where when I got home, I just wanted to look at the FXRs. I just wanted to see what was up with those and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I just kept indulging in it, you know, but I think ultimately meeting him and him taking me up on that $1,000 paint job was kind of a big push that made me ultimately want to get an FXR. You know what I mean? But, you know, like I said, Mike was, he took me up on the offer. Mike and Adam, and you guys just heard Adam on our podcast on the Road Tripping Show, are the only two people in Texas that jumped on our paint special. And the rest of the other 5 Dynas that we did were all from San Diego, LA, and like one from NorCal. You know, so it was cool, man. It was a good way to get my foot in the door, you know. And honestly, something I didn't realize, but I'm glad that it took place and it worked out well, is that I needed the practice. Like I kind of assumed that the panels were going to be easy, but they weren't. You know, they were easy as far as technical, but, you know, my eyes, I just didn't want basic shit, and I wanted my shit to have another level of skill involved with it. But even though I've been painting for, you know, well over 10 years at this point, you know, it was still like I needed to do this style of paint job on this canvas a couple times to start to develop a flow and a style that kind of is my own. You know what I mean? And these 7 paint jobs kind of gave me a chance to explore these canvases and explore these ideas in this style of paint job. And, you know, it was just kind of gave me the opportunity to kind of show the Instagram world what I could do. And then realistically, that's what got me here as far as like what you see us doing paint and all this type of stuff. It's like, it literally was me doing that crackhead ass shit. Over 10 years after I've been in this industry, I had to go out there and put myself on the very bottom of an industry and take pennies on the dollar to show everybody what I'm capable of so that they can see it. You know, I could have just said, no, I want $4,000 to paint this bike. And I would have been sitting there for a long time waiting for someone to give me that $4,000 paint job. I mean, it might have happened after I did, you know, a couple Dynas of my own or my FXR, but, you know, like that, doing it the way I did it, before I even started working on my FXR, I had already had multiple customers coming in wanting this style of paint job. So I don't know. I feel like the way I did it was the right way, and it worked out well, obviously. But, you know, like I said, man, talking FXR Mike, and then once he came to pick up his FXR from my house, you know, he sat in the garage and we talked for hours, man. I want to say it's hours. It could be less, but, you know, we just talked. And you know, I think as soon as he went home, I went in the house and got on Craigslist, started looking for FXRs, you know what I mean? And at this time, you know, I decided I wanted to move out of my big ass shop, you know what I mean? The one I was telling you that we had moved into to do all these big baggers and all this space. Because at this point in time, man, my heart and passion of motorcycles weren't really in the big wheel baggers anymore. So, you know, and I was kind of overwhelmed. I just, you know, I wanted to downsize my business. I had built it up so, you know, big in a sense that I wanted simplicity and I wanted more free time. You know, so I figured, let me get rid of this shop. I found a dude out in Waxahachie, where my shop is currently located, that he was painting cars. He had a little 1,500 square foot shop, nothing big, homemade booth. And I just said, man, you mind if I like just rent some space from you, you know, like a corner of the shop so I can do my prepping and do my base coating in the booth, and then I'll take all the artwork home. And for the first half of 2017, that's literally what I did. You know, I did all my artwork in the garage. That's why when you see a lot of the pictures from like last year, you see like the garage with all the posters and shit all over the walls, because that's where I did all my shit at, man. You know, that garage is the garage I started the Fast Life garage in. And, you know, I'd gone to 2 other shops and gotten big and then downsized and came back to the garage where, you know, it was comfortable. You know, I wanted to be somewhere where, I guess my thought was, I wanted to downsize my company so I can focus more on the art. Because if you listen to the first podcast of my story, like, art was a big factor in my life. Now, the one different thing between then and now is that my life since 14 has been nothing but motorcycles. My hobby, my passion, my everything has been motorcycles. I haven't had a time when I didn't have a motorcycle. It's like, you know, the one sad thing about who I am now is that I look at an airbrush and it's a job to me. I don't look at it as a release for or like a creative outlet or nothing like that. Like, I literally look at it as a job. So I don't have the same desire to explore my abilities and my and ideas like I used to, and that's something that I'm currently trying to find. And I don't know, man. Like, I'm not saying that I don't like to do custom paint jobs, but it's just a job. So I want to go and do a badass job, but when I'm not getting paid to do it, I don't want to do it. Does that make sense? But anyway, the idea was I wanted to go back to my garage. I wanted to have less overhead. I wanted to be able to do it and handle it on my own, you know, without having to need my brother, which my brother and I, obviously, if you know us or know us personally or know what up, we kind of get into a lot because of the age difference and, you know, well, just the many things. But, you know, we go back and forth because, you know, sometimes he's interested in the paint, sometimes he's not. And when he's not, he doesn't really do a good job. And when he is interested, he does a little bit better job. So it's kind of like our relationship is that. But yeah, so the idea was to downsize. So I shut that shop down. I mean, last year, 2017, I did 5 baggers the entire year. And some of those were just customers that I deal with on a very consistent basis. Some of them was the dealerships that I started doing some work with. But that's down from like 35 baggers or no, I wouldn't say it. Probably about 25 baggers that we did the year before in 2016. So, you know, it was just a way to like slim it down and get back to just, you know, focusing on artwork. And my vision was a Dyna is 5 pieces relatively, you know what I mean? So it's something I can do pretty quick, pretty easy. Not necessarily quick and easy, but I can put more art into a Dyna time-wise than I can a bagger, you know what I mean? Just because of the canvas sizes are way different, you know what I mean? So that was kind of my thought, and, you know, I kind of hit the ground running in 2017, you know? I had a paint booth at my shop before the big one, so when I moved out of it, you know, I ended up selling that paint booth for like $6,500, and then I literally the next day, which was the day after Christmas in 2016, I went and, you know, picked up my first FXR. And that's the gold one that, you know, I'm kind of famous for, I guess you'd say. So, needless to say, man, you know, this 2017 comes around, you know, I'm kind of still like the seed that I planted years ago with riding bikes and traveling is now, it's a fucking tree now. Like, all I want to do is just travel. And then after seeing that fucking 21 Days Under the Sun or Sky or whatever the fuck it is, it's like, now I want to camp. And after I've been talking to FXR Mike and all the people from that scene, it's just like, I want to start camping. I want to start doing this. I want to start doing that. It was just like I felt like a kid, you know, starting a new video game or something. Like, you're just exploring all these different ideas and these different things, you know what I mean? Or a grown-ass adult starting a new video game, if you're me. But, you know, so in 2017, you know, I hooked up with Mark because Mark started Texas Performance. And, you know, I decided me and him were just going to, you know, since we're close friends, you know, it's like I want him to have my paint and he wants me to have his motor building skills and stuff. So we decided to do some trade work with, you know, the paint jobs that I do for him. And he was keeping me on the road with the FXR and stuff like that. So, you know, we have a good relationship still to this day, and we help each other out in many ways and every way we can. But yeah, we decided to build the gold FXR. It was never really intended to go that far, never really intended to be that elaborate. It's just kind of like things kept falling into place. Like, you know, I met Chris Harry and he had the bag, so I traded him some paint work for the bags, and then I found a dude that had a fairing, and then, you know, it's an RP bike, so I wanted to kind of put it back to an RP, and I found a dude that had a 113 motor, and, you know, it just kind of like all fell into place, you know what I mean? So it worked out well for the most part. But, you know, like I said, getting things going, man, I got the Dyna up on the road, and that's kind of what I'm running around town on. And, you know, coming and hanging out at Chopper Supply when I can and being around that crowd and trying to just kind of, you know, I wanted to surround myself with people that I found fascinating or that I found intriguing in a sense, you know? And like Kenny was one of those dudes, and FXR Mike, and a lot of people from the Dynasty, man, because a lot of these dudes were different, and their view of motorcycle riding and like their attitude towards it was kind of refreshing, change from what I was used to in the bagger scene. And without trying to talk shit about the bagger scene, I felt like I was around people that were more enthusiastic about motorcycles and less enthusiastic about how much things cost and how much money they have. You know what I mean? So even to this day, like, I'm still trying to get rid of those kind of thoughts and those kind of egotistical things that I kind of developed in being around different people. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get rid of it, and every once in a while it pops back up, but I'm only human, right? But no, I mean, like, I'm really kind of struggling trying to wrap up. Like, 2017 was a crazy year. I mean, most of you guys probably followed a lot of the shit we did last year, and I don't want to spend too much more of your time talking about it, but the goal last year was to camp once every month, somewhere, and to try to do as many trips as I can, and when we started building the Gold bike, of course, Mark really put a lot of effort to help us out with that. Lindahl hooked us up. Fucking Lucky Days hooked us up. Who else? Fucking Clockworks hooked us up. And then, guys like FXR Mike and fucking Adam Garley and Daryl's Custom Cycles. I mean, so many people came together to help me get that bike on the road. Brad and Jesse and another dude, Nick, in the garage with us all fucking night for two or 3 weeks trying to get this thing together. It was a struggle, man. But, I got my first taste of Giddy up in 2017. And, you hear me talking about that all the time. And, ultimately when we got that Gold FXR done, I'm already used to magazines. I'm already used to kind of that world, but knowing Mark, it's like I really wanted him to have to be able to say that he did something that was in a magazine, because he's had plenty of stuff he's done in magazines, but he's never really gotten credit for it, which, hell, I have too, so I know how that feels. And I really wanted the Gold FXR to get in a magazine and give all these people that helped me build it the credit that I felt like they deserved, you know what I mean? And put these guys on the map here in Texas, you know what I'm saying? But you heard Jeff Holt, he didn't want to put any more panel paint jobs in the magazine. So, I kind of got the shitty end of the stick on that. But, like I said, it doesn't take away from what everybody did to help build that bike. You know what I mean? I felt obligated to push that bike to the ends of the country, everything that I could go to, to kind of, show these people that gave me their shit, their time and, their efforts. I wanted them to have the content that they deserve to have for helping me out. I wanted them to have a picture of that bike at the Golden Gate, or at the Sturgis, or at fucking Born Free, or at Monument Valley, at all these badass places, at fucking Daytona, all these things, But I guess the one thing last year that really played its toll or took its toll on me and my life was trying to keep up with the Joneses, man. Like, and that's not a bad thing. And there's nothing wrong with, I have no complaints about the Dyna FXR scene. I have none. But the one thing that is new that's been a struggle to kind of cope with and deal with and find my place in is this new world of the social media aspect. Like, like trying to fit in. Like, I don't know, man. Like, it's probably all stupid shit, and it really could be. And I'm open for opinions on this, but a lot of people started, this is like last year was the birth of the influencer, you know what I mean? So a lot of people that are, they started becoming these influential kind of people on Instagram because they rode bikes and stuff. And it's like, maybe I'm influenced by them and I wanted to ride my bike everywhere. Or maybe I was trying to be the influencer for a lot of people. I don't fucking know. But I enjoyed every mile I put down on that bike, but it made me fall in love with being on the road and being on that FXR and being on these bikes more than like I found a real passion for that. So, kind of going back to what I said earlier about, like, I used to airbrush and do art for a hobby. Now I want to leave and go on a road trip for a hobby. You know what I mean? So I'm still coping with how do I, all the responsibilities I have as an adult and a business owner and a dad and a husband and, someone that's doing all the shit that I got my hands in, like, how do I find time to really selfishly jump on a bike and just ride all over the country? You know what I mean? But I don't really know where I was going with that, but that's kind of where I'm at now, man. Like I said, last year was a crazy year, 2017. I did a podcast with Danger Dan in April last year, and I kind of talked briefly about some of the things that you're hearing on these last two podcasts. And it was being on his podcast that kind of brought me into the podcast world. Also with, FXR Mike being a huge podcast listener. After I did the one that I did with Danger Dan, like I felt kind of like, fuck, man, let me start listening to him. And I've always been a huge Joe Rogan fan from, just comedy days and stuff and listening, all his comedy specials. So I started listening to that and then it just opened my eyes to this whole world of podcasts, right? And I never really even considered it until literally December of last year about doing a podcast, I just, obviously I like to talk and, I would get with guys and, we'd be in the garage shooting the shit and we'd be talking for hours about bikes and ideas and opinions and all kinds of shit. And it's like, fuck, man, that's a podcast, So, I think also last year listening to guys like Joe Rogan and some of the podcasts I've listened to with him, it's like this dude did something or he talks about things with other guys that, we never really did that or I never did that. So he'd bring up things like ego and insecurities and these kind of like unmanly things, I guess you would say, in one perspective, that like me and Brad ain't going to talk about our egos together. Like that's not a conversation that we're going to have. And, me and certain people ain't going to talk about like our faults and our flaws, you know what I mean? So listening to him have conversations with other people and talk about the flaws of being a human and being, maybe a famous person or an unfamous person or an ambitious person, it kind of made me more aware of my flaws, So realistically, all the things that I've talked about in these last two podcasts, it's only a recent thing for me to have really stepped back and look and realize that maybe it was me that was an asshole. Maybe it was me that was being overbearing or whatever the case may be, instead of always looking at everybody else like they did me wrong. You know what I mean? Now, I will say this. I know for a fact that I've never screwed anybody over. Like I take pride in knowing that I've never cost anybody money in that aspect or left someone high and dry. Like I've never wanted that kind of bad juju, you know what I mean? But to say that, like the other hard thing that I'm still trying to understand is like, with social media being what it is now, it's like you have 20,000 followers and like dudes at the airport are like, hey man, I follow you on Instagram, or you go to a bike night and people are like just kind of nerding out on you and you're like, man, like I don't, me and my friends don't look at me like that. Like I don't feel like that kind of person or like a famous person or anything like that. But it's so funny how like just having a high following on social media, it's like people kind of associate that with like being successful or famous or something like that. But I don't know if I really agree with it or understand it, but I mean, and I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but like I'm exploring an idea or a thought and, but thinking about my life, man, like since the moment I painted that first bike for myself in my friend's, in my friend's fucking shed. And when I did it, and my buddy Chris and his parents and all the people hanging out that house were like, dude, like that's badass. You're so talented. So for the majority of my adult life, people have called me talented. They've called me skilled, or you're an artist, or you're amazing, you're this, you're that. And, it's like, I mean, for the most part, I think I've done a pretty good job of not letting it ever get to my head. I can't say that I'm perfect at that, but what I'm trying to get at right here is like, that's a different thing for certain people. Like, I mean, some people never get told that kind of stuff. Some people go to their job every day and they deal with a boss that thinks they're a piece of shit, like Jesse, right? But, so like, I don't know, maybe someone like that, it's easier for them not to have an ego because they're not being reinforced constantly, whether it's through actual people telling you you're amazing and you're a badass this and you're a badass that, or it's having a high following on Instagram or on some kind of social media platform where everybody's doing the same thing in another form, So being, like I said, since 21, doing custom paint and building bikes and being in magazines and whatever the case may be, and having to deal with the weird aspect of trying not to be arrogant and trying not to be cocky and egotistical, but doing something for a living that kind of puts you in that place to that you can be called that. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's weird. I don't really have an answer. I'm just kind of like putting it out there. But you know, I don't know. I never really wanted to be that way. You know, or I hope I don't. Or I try to keep myself in check. Or I try to, you know, just be a normal guy, which I am, obviously. You know, I couldn't imagine being like Danny Dixon or fucking, you know, Rusty Butcher having 100,000 fucking followers. Like, I don't know, man. That's not necessarily something I'm, you know, trying to shoot for. I just want to make a living doing what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Which is good enough for me. Like, the more I can get paid to do, the less work, right? But it is a crazy thing, man. Like, you know, whether it's the bikes that we've built, the paint jobs we've done, or even doing this podcast, you know, you start to get like a following or people who agree or disagree or whatever, but you become somebody that has attention from people, and that can easily turn into ego, you know, like that could easily be fucking fuel to an ego fire. You know what I mean? So I'm constantly trying to, you know, just be a normal guy. And I am. This is confusing, right? I'm sorry. But yeah, anyway, man, like I said, the main goal that I wanted to start doing for myself is to be more aware of myself and the impact that I have on the people around me, and, you know, to ultimately spend more time with my kids and my wife. And, you know, I've invested so much of my life into business, you know, into growth and into my skills. And sometimes, like, you know, that, to me, like, sometimes that's the easiest thing in the world, is just to be good at work. You know, just to be a good worker is easy. Like, you go to work, you get rewarded, you get a paycheck, or you get good job, buddy. But sometimes it's hard to go home and be a husband or be a dad. You know what I mean? Those are real challenges that I'll be honest with you, they kind of scare the fuck out of me sometimes. But they're real challenges, man. They're real challenges because, you know, it's not like a pamphlet like at a job where you like, you know, like tells you how to do your job and you just got to do that thing. Like, no, you have to adapt in so many kind of ways to be more, you know, to be anything, to be in tune with your wife and in her life and her you know what I mean? And it's a fucking mess, right? But like, my life has always kind of been an overbearing thing to even my friendships and to my relationships, you know, like, and I'm aware of that now, you know, and I'm trying to get to a point where I feel like I can step back a little bit from like, I want to be able to go to work Monday through Friday and not go to work Saturday and Sunday and not feel guilty, you know, and spend that time with my wife and my kids, or spend that time with my friends, you know, spend that time with people that have helped me get where I'm at in my life, that deserve my attention. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm pushing myself now, is to just in some form or fashion give back to the people that has helped me get here. You know what I mean? Or the people that's put up with my shit. Let's put it like that. You know, that's what I want, man. Like, me and my wife have been talking about, like, next summer, like, you know, getting this van dialed in and just maybe financially getting to a point where we can take 2 or 3 months and just go hit the road and just do what me and her have been talking about doing. You know, it's do it now or do it never, or maybe we never get to do it. So, you know, the idea is to build this little chopper for Giddy Up, and then come when our lease is up in this apartment we just got, you know, we'll put all our shit in storage. We'll put that chopper in the back of that van. We'll put a little spread so we can sleep, and some clothes, and maybe a couple airbrushes and tools, and just go drive all over the country. You know, that's kind of what I want to do. I want to experience that with my wife, because that's something we found that we wanted to do together. And I spent my whole year last year traveling, not with her, on that bike, and giving, you know, everybody else attention, you know, and I want to kind of do it for the people that helped me get there, you know. I guess I don't really know where I'm going with this. I'm just kind of rambling, but, you know, I don't know. But anyway, man, this podcast, man, it's kind of opened my eyes to a lot of stuff. It's kind of, you know, made me start to check my thoughts and check who I am and check my opinions, or at least if I have a strong opinion, also have a strong awareness of letting other people talk me out of that opinion, you know. Not being, I don't know, there's just a lot. Anyway, man, I hope I did my second half justice. Like I said, there's a lot that's happened in the last year and a half, but I mean, it's all right there on Instagram, and it's kind of too new to talk about, in my opinion. Like, I don't know, It's weird. This whole podcast thing has been strangely weird to me, but it made me really want to get the second half done whenever I got the messages about the first half. And, you know, I think that's one of the one things that I try to tell my brother, I try to tell my wife, is to just kind of be mindful of how other people perceive you. You know, like we all like to say like, fuck y'all, I'm who I am. But if everybody hates you because you're an asshole or you're a dick, it's probably because you're a dick and you're an asshole, and you should probably stop doing that. Not blame it on everybody else. Say, oh, fuck those guys, they don't like me. You know, fuck those dudes, those queers, whatever. But anyway, yeah, that's the goal, man. I just want to, you know, hopefully after this August push, man, it's just getting these last 2 baggers out of our shop, and then I can focus on my helmets and my choppers and my Dynas, and I'm ready to downsize the business even more than I did last year, you know, and get to a point, man, like I found some real joy out of doing helmets. Like I've always hated helmets, always hated painting them. But now that financially we get the kind of money we need to do them, it's like there's a real excitement doing a helmet because, you know, like I've said before on this podcast, man, like it's one canvas that I can go as far as I want, and I can explore my artistic abilities. And it's not, I'm not gambling with as much of like fucking up as I would if I was doing it on a full bag or a full Dyna. So moving forward after August, you know, like my goal is to really focus on the helmets, focus on smaller projects, and honestly put a lot more effort into these podcasts and doing videos, because like I've said in recent podcasts, man, it's like, you know, the thought that I kept having for the last year was, man, I need to make some bars and risers with the Fast Life Garage. I need a derby cover. I need this, I need that. But I think that I found something different that I didn't really know was there with this podcast and with YouTube, and with the ability to kind of branch our brand out in a different way than, you know, we were doing. Like instead of buying a product to sell you, you know what I mean? Like I can buy something and you can put it on your Dyna, but if you don't have a Dyna, then you can't buy the product. But if we give you these podcasts and you support us in Patreon, or if we do the YouTube thing and we start making content on there where, you know, advertisers will give us money for it, then we can actually make a decent living doing this type of stuff. And, you know, that's kind of like where I'm thinking that it is the thing for me to do and thing for me to take this business, you know. I mean, I love motorcycles, and that's what it's always going to be about. But I just don't know if like our business has we definitely don't have the capital to be investing in a lot of different parts and exhaust systems and wheels, but we do have the ability to talk, and we do some visually cool things. Which once we get the skills down, the video and edit it, then we'll be able to give you some content on YouTube. And I'll be honest with you, I'm putting a lot of my eggs in that basket right now. That's where I want to take this business, because it's like I said, if me and my wife take that trip next year, you know, it might be Patreon that's keeping us on the road for a couple of months. You know what I mean? And obviously we're going to do podcasts, and obviously we're going to do videos on this trip. And, you know, that's kind of where I want to go, man. I still want to travel. That's realistically one of the most important things in my life. I'm looking forward to taking my daughter with me to California next month when I go drop these baggers and these Dynas back off in NorCal. I wanted her to see San Francisco the way that I saw it the first time, and hopefully get the travel bug distilled in her at 17 or 16, so that when she does turn 20 or 19 or whatever, that she kind of has the yearn to get the fuck out of where she's at and go see what the world's about, you know. But yeah, man, I appreciate you guys sitting with me through this, and appreciate all the feedback on it. So, you know, rock on. What's up, guys? Quick announcement before I get to the ending credits of this. But yeah, so when I recorded this, I recorded it 3 or 4 separate times, and then I compiled it together. So if some of the sound is different from here and there, that's why. So anyway, thank you guys again, and here's the end credits. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Yeah, I'm done talking about myself, right? Thank God, huh? Anyway, yeah, man, it's, you know, we got lots of plans for this stuff. So as always, man, go to our website, fastlifegarage.com. Check out that Patreon. Check out the iTunes. Just, you know, share and save, and, you know, help us do what we can. And whatever you do, we appreciate it. Also want to thank Texas Performance MC for the continued support. Check them out on IG and on the website, texasperformance.com. Also, Payne Huffer Metal Flake on IG, paynehuffer.com. Dudes down in Indianapolis, horsepowerinc.net, Horsepower Inc. on Instagram. Hard Drive, man, check them out as well, hdtwin.com and Hard Drive Parts on Instagram. I'm hoping to do some more podcasts next week. You know, I want to get some more people on here, and I want to keep this momentum going with everything, you know, so we're going to try to figure out some cool shit to do. I got a friend on the road right now waiting on him to get home. I can't wait to talk to him for another episode of Road Tripping, and I'm going to try to get some more of those going. We might have Mark on. I don't know. We'll see how it works. We might have Zombie Mike on, and I've been trying to get me and FXR Mike to do another one again. So stay tuned. We're going to bring some more soon, and thank you for the continued support. You guys have a awesome day. Deuces.